Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt. I am trying to catch up with a breaking story out of Atlanta that is very, very sad, and its details are sketchy. First reports always are, but 8 people have been killed in Atlanta overnight in 2 shootings at massage parlors. And let me just read you the New York Times intro. 8 people were shot to death at 3 massage parlors in the Atlanta area on Tuesday evening, the authorities said, raising fears that the crimes may have targeted people of Asian descent. 6 of the people killed were Asian, 2 were white, according to law enforcement officials. All but 1 were women. A suspect, identified as Robert Aaron Long, 21 of Woodstock, Georgia, was captured in Crisp County, about 150 miles south of Atlanta, after a manhunt, said the authorities, who had earlier released a surveillance image of a suspect near a Hyundai Tucson outside one of the massage parlors. Although it was not clear whether there was a racial motivation in the shootings, Stop AAPI Hate, formed to prevent anti-Asian discrimination during the coronavirus pandemic, called them an unspeakable tragedy for both the victims' families and the Asian American community that has been, quote, reeling from high level of racist attacks. The Atlanta police initially characterized the shooting as one of the parlors as a robbery in progress. The suspect in custody is white. The Washington Post account is, shootings at 3 Atlanta area massage partners left 8 people dead on Tuesday, including 6 Asian women, spurring concern among advocates and police that the killings could be the latest in a surge of hate crimes against Asian Americans. Police arrested Aaron Long, 21, after a brief manhunt. Authorities said they do not yet know of a motive in the killing, which left 4 women, all of Asian descent, dead inside 2 massage parlors, and 4 other people, including 2 Asian women, killed in another parlor in nearby Cherokee County. The violence stoked fears in a community already reeling from attacks and racist targeting and left police from Seattle to New York mobilizing to add protection for Asian Americans. It seems clear to me that one would have to assume it is a race-based assault until otherwise. It sounds like Dylan Roof walking into Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, years ago, to a Bible study at which all the participants were black, going to a place that he knew where his victims would be African American and killing them. And we don't know anything about this other than that's what it appears. I'll keep you posted as news occurs throughout the day. A lot of show today. Glenn Youngkin is joining me, the next governor of Virginia. We're going to talk about the current governor of Virginia in his latest nuttery. We've got Jane Timken, who's running for Senate in Ohio. My friends John Allen and Amie Parnes are here. They're the co-authors of the brand new bestseller, Lucky, How Joe Biden Barely Won the Presidency. They'll be on in the last hour today. Josh Kraushaar, David Cortman from Alliance Defending Freedom, our friend Mike Gallagher. Lots to talk about today. Let me do a quick rundown of news other than the shootings in Atlanta. 2 new cases of a coronavirus in England linked to the Philippines. It's a new variant. Remember, variants are the danger. We're getting ahead of this thing. We're up to 70 million vaccines, shots administered in the United States. By May, I believe we will have reached that magical herd immunity. It doesn't mean no one will get sick, but it'll mean that life can get back to normal. But a variant would change everything, turn everything upside down. We don't know yet whether the variant from the Philippines is like the variant from Britain, effectively disabled by the vaccines that we have. The Secretary of Homeland Security, Secretary Mayorkas, said that illegal boarding crossings are at a 2-decade high. It's the worst it's been in 2 decades. Took Joe Biden 2 months. Got to the worst in 2 decades. Meanwhile, according to Axios, there have been 4 terror watch list suspects arrested at the border. 4. That's what they're telling us about. 3 of them from Yemen, 1 from Serbia. All right, that is not good news. The whole world knows that the Biden administration has basically suspended border enforcement. They have telegraphed a message, come one, come all in free, and as a result, we are overwhelmed. Even though they say they didn't mean to do that, they have done it. U.S. intelligence agencies discovered that Putin authorized pro-Trump influence campaign. That's pretty predictable coming from a Biden intelligence apparatus. Honestly, it's a Steele dossier part 500. They meddle in every election. They influence every election. They try to imply that Trump won the first time because of Putin. There is no proof of that. They just meddle. Biggest news of the day in terms of history, Dead Sea Scrolls discovered. And I have linked to this in the Times of Israel. It's astonishing what they have found. They found a 10,000-year-old basket, maybe the oldest artifact anywhere in the world, a basket. And they found thousands of pieces of varied ancient scripture to add to the, a piece can be one letter. It's really quite amazing, and it's an adventure story using drones and repelling people. I can't read it to you. It goes on forever, but the Cave of Horror is 80 meters below the cliff face, and there were 40 skeletons of the Bar Kokhba rebels discovered during excavations in the 50s and 60s, but Israel sent the pros back, and they have now found just an amazing haul. It's going to upend biblical studies again. I knew a fella, Mark Roberts, had been on the show a few times, who had some connection to the first Dead Sea Scrolls study. Now, what they ought to do is what they did with the virus. Post pictures immediately of every fragment and let the world's intellectual community go to work jointly. The last time they did the opposite. They gave them into the possession of one scholar who was not exactly normal, and it went off the rails and no one saw it. No one heard about it for years and years and years. Transparency, transparency, transparency. Let's see what they've got. It's mostly minor profits, but we'll see. Great Britain announced yesterday they're going to add nuclear weapons to their stockpile. Boris is going big. It's the only way for him to stay relevant, for the United Kingdom to stay relevant in the competition with the world's nuclear power, so he is going that way. Good for Boris. Mitch McConnell took to the floor of the Senate yesterday to lay down the law on the filibuster, if in fact Democrats change the filibuster rules. And Joe Biden said last night he's in favor of doing so. He said that to George Stephanopoulos, cut 21.
So you're not likely to get Republican votes for the tax increase. You're not likely to get Republican votes for H.R. 1, expanding voting rights, or the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So aren't you going to have to choose? I know you've been reluctant to do away with the filibuster. Aren't you going to have to choose between preserving the filibuster and advancing your agenda?
Yes. But here's the choice. I don't think you have to eliminate the filibuster. You have to do it what it used to be when I first got to the Senate and back in the old days when you used to be around there. And that is that a filibuster, you had to stand up and command the floor. And you had to keep talking alone. You couldn't call for, no one could say, quorum call. Once you stopped talking, you lost that, and someone could move in and say, I moved the question of. So you got to work for the filibuster.
So you're for that reform. You're for bringing back the talking filibuster.
I am. That's what it's supposed to be.
So here's Mitch McConnell's response, cut number 7.
Two protections for conscience and the right to life of the unborn. Concealed carry reciprocity in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Massive hardening of security on our southern border. We saw during amendment votes just days ago that some common sense Republican positions actually enjoy more support right now than some of the Democratic committee chairs' priorities.
Mitch then goes on to tell people it will be a scorched earth Senate. I will play that for you when we get back. A little bit long to jam in here, but scorched earth is the operative term. Don't go anywhere, America. Lots of news today, lots of news, and you'll hear it all right here on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
My opponent asks her supporters to recite a 3-word loyalty pledge. It reads, I'm with her. I choose to recite a different pledge. My pledge reads, I'm with you, the American people.
For me, that's the political kill shot, Raheem, where you take the classic establishment attitude of, you better be with me, I'm your elitist leader, and he says, actually, I want to fight with you, I'm with you. Talk to me about taxonomy, categorization. They have quite successfully turned populism into a pejorative, into a negative. What are we witnessing around the world in your vocabulary?
Oh, goodness. Even though, how long have you got? Even though, Barack Obama, when he came on the scene, they lauded populism and they lauded him running as this populist president, right? And then suddenly, a couple of years later, populism didn't work.
So community organizers are okay, but Donald Trump, populism not.
Right, correct. Right. And he was, it's incredible I had forgotten that clip. It's incredible to go back to that moment because, of course, what did they say about Donald Trump for the 4 years after that is that he demanded explicit loyalty from everybody that worked for him, personal loyalty. Whereas her campaign phrase was literally, I'm with her. Not I'm with the country, not I'm with America, not I'm even with the future, right? Not an ideology, not a philosophy.
Not
just
a platform. Her.
Just her. Right?
Cultic.
Cultish, totally cultish. And that's the same chart. They're very good at this. I mean, they are way better than we are at this. Is taking little things and projecting them onto their opponents.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
If the president or the ostensible president is not behaving as the president, the country needs to know, is the vice president in charge? So it strikes me we have a constitutional crisis. I don't know how you get around it.
So let me give you the best guess that I can kind of piece together. All of Capitol Hill is sitting behind a fence with razor wire on top of it. Joe Biden is not taking public meetings. He is barely having public appearances, and even those are tightly controlled. He shows up with note cards in his pocket when he loses his way. He pulls the note cards out. He can't even read what's on the note cards. Kamala Harris is taking all of the heads of state meetings. She's making all the phone calls. She's the one interacting with other heads of state across the world. Barack Obama never left Washington, D.C., unlike other presidents. Most presidents leave the Capitol once their time in office is over. Susan Rice, who was his most loyal foot soldier of all of the Obama administration officials, she went out on 9/11 of 2012, lied to the entire nation on all the television shows about the Benghazi attack, suffered no wrongdoing for that. In fact, she got promoted. She left the ambassadorship that she had in the UN, and she came into the White House staff after that event was carried out. So you've got someone who's very loyal, who is now Joe Biden's domestic policy chief advisor. And my guess is that she's also probably the author or responsible for the authoring of most of the executive orders that the executive branch has issued since he's been in office. My hunch is that President Obama is pulling the strings vis-a-vis Susan Rice.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
I looked at the headline the gentleman was calling about. This is in Newsweek. Evanston is paying reparations of $25,000 to black residents. They say that's not enough. Now, I said that to the gentleman without even
Morning, everybody. It's St. Patrick's Day. I hope you have your green on. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see I've got my green tie on. I'm no dummy. I'm not going to court the disfavor of the leprechauns. Hewitts are Irish. I'm a mixed marriage. My mother's people were Millers from the south, County Clare, and my father's people were Orange from the north, from County Down in Saintfield. So they got together in Ohio, in Ashtabula, and merged, brought about peace and serenity between the. So we're all Irish here today. Let me also say it's a great day. 2 new affiliates this week. 2 new affiliates. Last week, KGMI in Bellingham joined us, and we're so happy to have the Northwest United States so well represented. Today we add WJTK in Lake City, Florida. 96.5 FM, The Jet. And I love Lake City. It's the gateway to Florida. And I especially love it because it is the crossroads of the 10 and the 75. And so you really go through Lake City and you are zipping along on the 10 and the 75. I love interstates. It's where you pick up new listeners that spread the word about the Hugh Hewitt Show everywhere. The same is true about Newsy, 105.5 and 1400 WNZE in Clarksville, Tennessee, that we added yesterday. So Lake City, The Jet, 96.5, and Newsy, 1400 and 105.5, and WNZE in Clarksville, Tennessee, also on the 24 and interstate. I love these 2 affiliates like Bellingham. Welcome. The Hugh Hewitt universe is expanding. Many of you are turning to this show to replace the man who cannot be replaced. And Rush can't be replaced. But I will do my best to give you the news that you need every day and the analysis that you want. And the best guests. I don't do it like Rush does. I do a lot of interviews. Rush did very few. I do a lot of news, and Rush did a lot of commentary. But our worldview is very similar. And he was very helpful to me at the beginning of my career in 1990. He'd already pioneered in 1989, and it opened up the world to talk shows. So I've been doing it for 30 years. I'll give you the rundown full at one point. For my new audience, one of the things I do in March every year is raise money for Food for the Poor. They usually direct their attention to one of the terrible disasters in the world. This year, Honduras, where on top of COVID and a shattered economy shut down by the lack of tourists, came torrential rains and downpours that wiped out a lot of infrastructure. And as Angela Loma, the executive director and my friend for years, tells us, it's a desperate, desperate situation.
It's very painful for them to leave their country, but when your child is starving, they feel pressured to do something for their children to survive. We have always depended on the listeners because they have never disappointed us in giving donations towards this, because this is not only helping them to survive, it's helping them also to stay happily in their own countries.
This listener audience has never not come through for Food for the Poor. It's a very generous audience, and to Lake City and to our friends at Fort Campbell and in Clarksville, Tennessee, and Bellingham, please join in. We don't look for a lot. I mean, once in a while, we'll get a $10,000 donation. Someone will just be listening, and they'll say, okay, I'll go to HughHewitt.com, click on the banner at the top, and they'll write the big check. I think that's the largest donation we've ever had. Maybe we had 15,000 once. But a lot of $15, $20, $50 donations, a few 100, a lot of 500s, whatever you can do. Food for the Poor has incredible, incredible, incredible effectiveness. That's why I let them sponsor this. Let me also tell you about the market brought to you by Birch Gold. Gold this morning is at $1733.50. Remember, it dropped below $1,700 last week. I told you a great entry point. What matters is that you get started. I buy my gold from Birch Gold. You can find it at hughgold.com, hughgold.com. Easy to remember. Even Steelers fans remember that. And you can text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747. They will tell you how to buy gold. More importantly, they will tell you how to use your existing IRA or 401k to diversify 10% of your savings and retirement into the physical gold. The Dow dropped 127 yesterday. The NASDAQ went up 11. The S&P went down 6. The Fed is meeting today, so it will be a wait and see meeting around the markets. But you can always rely on gold, and you can always rely on Birch Gold. HughGold.com, or text my name, Hugh, to 474747. We come back with more Joe Biden and George Stephanopoulos after this. Stay tuned.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
I looked at the headline the gentleman was calling about. This is in Newsweek. Evanston is paying reparations of $25,000 to black residents. They say that's not enough. Now, I said that to the gentleman without even seeing this headline. They say that's not enough. And this is what we're going to be facing. You know, decades ago, a congressman named John Conyers would introduce a bill at the beginning of Congress every 2 years for reparations. And it was a joke. And every year he'd do it. And every year he'd do it. Never in a million years did I ever think we'd get to the point where people are seriously taking this, where serious people are taking this seriously. Where do you start with this? I've heard that this is for 400 years of slavery. I heard 250 years of slavery. America didn't become a country until 1787. Slavery ended 1865. That's not 400 years. That's not 250 years. Government didn't own slaves. States didn't own slaves. Individuals owned slaves. And Obama said that in his view, reparations were justified. Of course they were justified. To the slaves themselves or to their legal heirs, good luck trying to find them. Evanston is paying reparations of $25,000 to black residents. They say that's not enough. It'll never be enough.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
Los Angeles Ralph's stores, Ralph's is a major supermarket chain here, to close in May. The Kroger company announced 3 store closing in Los Angeles following an earlier decision to close a Ralph's and a Food for Less in Long Beach. Now, why would that be? The move follows the Los Angeles City Council's grocery store workers' hero pay vote on March 3rd. That's an ordinance that requires large grocery and pharmacy retailers to offer employees an additional $5 per hour in hazard pay amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So you see, it worked. We are forcing you, I don't know what right they have, the whole thing, it is so amazing. We are going to tell private companies how much they have to pay their workers. They may not be able, and they will close, and the workers will be then unemployed, but we don't care. That's what I mean, the callousness. The left lives to feel good about itself. This is the self-esteem movement as a monster. Self-esteem movement was founded by a liberal Democrat, John Vasconcellos, I think in the 1980s, as a member of the California State Senate.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau of Yankee Institute for Townhall.com. Matt Meyer is president of the Berkeley Federation of Teachers, a union leading the effort to keep children at home, insisting that reopening schools is just too unsafe. So jaws dropped when video of him was seen taking his own daughter to in-person preschool. The episode highlights the hypocrisy and cynicism evident in too much COVID policy, especially in education. School districts with strong teachers' unions are less likely to hold in-person classes. Meanwhile, our children remain trapped at home, suffering from social isolation and learning loss. The achievement gap has increased, and there's a worsening youth mental health crisis. Parents have stood by helplessly at the mercy of the unions, even as the CDC admits that schools can reopen safely. In-person learning shouldn't be reserved for children of the privileged. Our kids deserve policies that put their rightful needs over the self-serving demands of union elites. I'm Carol Platt-Liebau.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you, even though a shadow is across it given the murders in Atlanta of 8 Asian Americans. It does seem to me like that's going to be a race-driven crime. And we'll find out the nut and the evil man who did this. And we'll talk about it when we have more facts. Yesterday, Mitch McConnell said we're not going to be backing tax increases, period, which means any tax increase will be a purely Democratic tax increase. And the pressure is building on the president to push a filibuster reform or a filibuster change. Now, they'll make Joe Manchin into a liar if they do that, but that's an acceptable cost. They don't like Joe Manchin anyway in the Democratic Party. They'll make Kristen Sinema into a liar if they do it. If they change it anything other than by 60-40. You can change the Senate rule 60-40, otherwise you have to use the nuclear option. And Joe Manchin swore up and down he would not do that. Again and again and again and again. He said at one point, blank, blank, invoking the Savior's name, what part of never don't you understand? Never going to change it. And so he said on Chuck Todd show that he might consider supporting a change that would be a talking filibuster, but that would take 60 votes. It's not the nuclear option. And again, because Democrats never go in hard way of an interview like me, I would just like to get to know what he means. Are you supporting a nuclear option to go to the talking filibuster? That would make Joe Manchin a liar. And I don't think he is a liar. I don't think he wants to go down as a liar, and I don't think it's going to work. But Mitch McConnell, nevertheless, went onto the Senate floor and warned everyone of everything that would pass without a filibuster. But then he warned, but that's not going to happen because it'll be scorched earth. Cut number 7.
2 protections for conscience and the right to life of the unborn.
Yes, he's playing the same one again.
Concealed carry reciprocity in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Massive hardening of security on our southern border. We saw during amendment votes just days ago that some common sense Republican positions actually enjoy more support right now than some of the Democratic committee chairs' priorities. And this is with them in the majority. So the pendulum, Mr. President, would swing both ways, and it would swing hard. My colleagues and I have refused to kill the Senate for instant gratification. In 2017 and 2018, I was lobbied to do exactly what Democrats want to do now. A sitting president leaned on me to do it. He tweeted about it. What did I do, Mr. President? I said to the president at that time, no. I said no repeatedly, because becoming a U.S. Senator comes with higher duties than steamrolling any obstacle to short-term power. I meant it. Republicans meant it. Less than 2 months ago, 2 of our Democratic colleagues said they mean it too. If they keep their word, we have a bipartisan majority that can put principle first and keep the Senate safe.
He is laying out that it will be the end. Joe Manchin's obituary will be a Joe Manchin liar, died today. Kristen Sinema's obituary will be Kristen Sinema liar, died today. They can't take a position that's absolute and then walk it back. And so I'm not worried about it, actually. But the Wall Street Journal includes this editorial today. The biggest question in Washington for the next 2 years isn't about a single policy or whether President Biden will expose himself to a press conference. It's whether Democrats use their narrow Senate majority to kill the legislative filibuster rule, requiring 60 votes in order to ram a radical agenda into law with a mere 50 votes plus Vice President Kamala Harris. 2 Democrats, Kristen Sinema of Arizona, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, promised at the start of the year that they wouldn't vote to do so. But the progressive and media pressure is building on the pair to renege on their pledges as legislation passed by the House piles up on the Senate door. Democratic Senate leaders are vowing that they'll find a way to evade the filibuster one way or another. Republicans can see these signs, and on Tuesday, Minority Leader Mitch McConnell made clear what would happen if they do kill the filibuster. It won't be pretty. Quote, some Democratic senators seem to imagine that this would be a tidy trade-off if they could just break the rules on a razor-thin majority. Sure, it might damage the institution, but then nothing would stand between them and their entire agenda, a new era of fast-track policymaking, McConnell said. Don't count on it, Mr. McConnell continued. Quote, so let me say very clearly for all 99 of my colleagues, nobody serving in this chamber can even begin to imagine what a completely scorched earth Senate would look like. None of us who have served 1 minute in the Senate that was completely drained of comedy and consent. Generalissimo, if you can find just those two sentences, that would be terrific. So let me say this very clearly for all 99 of my colleagues. Nobody serving in this chamber can even begin to imagine what a completely scorched earth Senate would look like. None of us have served 1 minute in the Senate that was completely drained of all comedy and consent. It's 3 sentences, Dwayne. He then explained what that could mean in practice if Republicans responded by withdrawing the unanimous consent required for the Senate to function. I want our colleagues to imagine a world where every single task, every one of them, requires a physical quorum, which, by the way, the vice president does not count in determining a quorum. That's right. A quorum without unanimous consent is 51 senators, and there are only 50 Democrats. If Republicans kept their nerve in the opposition, Democrats couldn't confirm nominees or vote on legislation. The Nancy Pelosi-Joe Biden agenda couldn't move any more than if there were a filibuster. Democrats may think this is a bluff, or that the public would revolt if Republicans ground Senate business to a halt. But are they willing to take that bet? Democrats shouldn't underestimate how united Senate Republicans would be, how much GOP grassroots support they'd have. My gosh, it would be the greatest. It would raise more money. Every day they stood there and refused to show up, they would raise so much money because the American people are sick of the left steamrolling the 80% of the country that does not believe in H.R. 1 and its radical measures, does not believe in the radical tax hike. And it's a radical agenda. The Senate Democrats are radical. And 80% of the country is against them. And if the Republicans stood united, they would win that. Even if it took 2 years, they would win. If Democrats break the filibuster in a 50-50 Senate to federalize 50 state election laws, force mandatory unionization on 27 states with right-to-work laws, add 2 new states to pack the Senate or pass the Green New Deal, yeah, they wouldn't. There would be no quorum. Mr. McConnell pointed out the obvious majorities aren't permanent. And eventually Republicans would be in a position to rule the Senate without a filibuster. In fact, I think they'd sweep the Senate elections in 2022. Imagine what they might pass. Mr. McConnell gave a few examples, defunding Planned Parenthood. But for political flavor, think of GOP Senators Josh Hall and Paul Rand unbound. These columns have been frustrated by many Democratic filibusters over the years. But the rule exists to protect minority rights and require large majorities for significant reforms. If Democrats blow it up on the narrowest of majority votes, and after 2 of their members have lied to the American people, I just don't think Joe Manchin's a liar. I don't think so. They will own the unintended consequences. Now, let me pause for a moment and also tell you there is a movement underway, and I want to explain what's going on. The United States Constitution is a separation of powers constitution. It's separated 2 ways, the federal government and the state government. They have different powers, different authorities, and one may not trespass on the other's authorities and powers. The police power, for example, the general police power is reserved to the state. There is no federal police force, although there's a Federal Bureau of Investigation. They do not have general police authority. They can only act under the enumerated powers delegated to the Congress in Article 1. And then there's a separation of powers within the executive branch, Article 1, Article 2, Article 3. But the big separation of powers is the federal government versus the state government. Now, the state governments didn't create the Constitution, the people did, acting in conventions in the state that were not legislatures. They derived from the people, the consent of the governed. In 1789, it was ratified, drawn up in 1787, hasn't changed in any major way except for the 14th, 15th, and 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which were necessary to correct the original sin of slavery. But the federal government may not tell the states what to do. And that has been upheld again and again and again. The first case I ever worked on when I was a summer associate for Baker and Botts in the summer of 1981 was Mississippi V Ferc. And the brief that got filed there was about how the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission couldn't tell the states what to put back and what to cover up and how to mine and how not to mine. The states lost that case, but they subsequently have won major cases, including in Sebelius, the Obamacare case, where it says the federal government may not use the money that they've got by the billions to coerce the states into doing what they want. Well, in the law just passed, the federal government, the Congress said, and President Biden signed, a hostage bill. Hey, states, here's billions and billions and billions of dollars. But if you take this money, you cannot cut taxes. That, my friends, is unconstitutional. And Dave Yost, if you're listening, the Attorney General of Ohio, Mark Brnovich, the Attorney General of Arizona, go and sue today to have declaratory relief that is defunct. That is not constitutional. It has to get going quickly. And I believe that there are dozens of Republican state attorney generals who know that their state sovereignty is on the line. Blue states want to control red states, and they are using this narrow majority to tell people you can't cut taxes. Now, if you want to send, we cannot stop the Democrats from sending $350 billion to the states to bail out their public employee unions. They're not going to the pensions, but they're going to keep everyone on the payroll. You won't see a dollar of that, by the way. The roads won't get built. You're just not going to see it. I'll talk about it for 2 years. You're never going to see it. But they cannot tell the state legislatures ever what they can and cannot do on the state tax side. That's why Virginia's only got a 5.5% income tax, and California's got a 13.5% income tax, and Florida's got a 0% income tax, and Maine's got an 8% income tax, and Texas got a 0%. Because states are free to do what they want, and they cannot be coerced. They cannot be hijacked. They cannot be made into puppets of the federal government, which this new stimulus does. So go and sue. Sue today. Dave Yost, I know you're listening. I count on 2 listeners every day, David Yost and Urban Meyer, 2 great Buckeyes. Urban Meyer is building a team in Jacksonville. He can't sue, but you can, Dave. Get going. You too, Mark. Time for ReliefFactor.com. I got no exercise yesterday. I feel lousy. I got no exercise. I did watch 3 hours of Breaking Bad season 5. There you go. It is Icarian, Curcumin, Resveratrol, Omega. Now, Breaking Bad did not give me anything except a headache. Season 5 is kind of wild, by the way. And I need 2 swallows of lukewarm coffee. Down the hatch they go. They're the easiest pills in the world to swallow because Seth and Pete worked very hard on designing not only the best scientific anti-inflammatory natural substances to support the temporary relief of minor aches and pains, but making it easy to take. A lot of people can't swallow horse pills, and these aren't. These are easy to swallow. They make you feel better. They fight off the effects of exercise and aging. You need to try it. You need to try the 3-week starter pack, $19.95. Go and get it, and then come right back. Glenn Youngkin is going to be the next governor of Virginia, and he's showing up here because, hey, the Commonwealth, you need to elect this guy. Stay tuned.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Earlier today, the White House Chief of Staff, Ronald Klain, tweeted out the front page of the New York Times. Now, listen, I didn't see this because I don't read the New York Times, but here's the cover of the front page of the New York Times. Above the fold, big headline, Eric Hansen's going to lose his mind. My operations manager is going to flip his lid when he hears this. Eric, the headline of the New York Times, President's goal, July 4th gatherings with close family. That's the president's goal. And the White House Chief of Staff tweeted, this is what we are working toward. Oh, really? That's what we are working toward? There ain't no we. You got a mouse in your pocket? Because we're doing that. Listen, I get vaccinated, I'm done. And come arrest me if I'm going to be with my family, inside rather than outside. Do you have any comprehension how nuts this is? what we're working toward. And the New York Times, there they are. They're so proud of themselves over there. The old gray lady. Here's our headline. President's goal. 4th of July gatherings with close family outside. Just a few of you now, but that's what we're working towards. These people are lunatics, and Americans know it. That's the best part.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Oprah Winfrey, the fact that Oprah tolerated this whole conversation is so unbelievably disappointing. And I'll get to that. But first, I want to play this tape right here of Meghan Markle saying this, making the claim that there were racist remarks against her child's skin color. But she won't say who said it because she's doing maybe a Jussie Smollett thing. Play cut 8.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born. That was relayed to me from Harry. Those were conversations that family had with him.
If he were too brown, that would be a problem. Are you saying that?
I wasn't able to follow up with why, but that if that's the assumption you're making, I think that feels like a pretty safe one.
Feels like a safe one. Meghan, you are now allowing your feelings, I guess I should say, to dictate an accusation of a family that largely, by all evidence available, embraced you. What an unbelievably ungrateful person you are. No gratitude. Perfect leftist, no gratitude.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending.
Hey, it's Dwayne over at Hugh Show. Do you have a normal phone line for Glenn? Because his Skype's not picking up. Okay. All right, let me try again. Let me try again.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I'm joined now by Glenn Youngkin. Glenn is going to be the next governor of Virginia. Oh, we lost the connection. Okay, well, then we'll stand by and wait for that. His website is Youngkin for Governor. In the meantime, I want to play for you that Mitch McConnell bit on the floor of the Senate. Let's hit Mitch, warning what will happen.
So let me say this very clearly for all 99 of my colleagues. Nobody serving in this chamber can even begin to imagine what a completely scorched earth Senate would look like. None of us have served 1 minute in a Senate that was completely drained of comedy and consent. This is an institution that requires unanimous consent to turn the lights on before noon, to proceed with a garden variety floor speech, to dispense with the reading of lengthy legislative text, to schedule committee business, to move even non-controversial nominees at anything besides a snail's pace. So, Mr. President, I want our colleagues to imagine a world where every single task, every one of them, requires a physical quorum, which, by the way, the Vice President does not count.
It's pretty hard to imagine, and Mitch is getting ready, but I don't think Joe Manchin's a liar, so I don't think that's going to happen. Let me check for AndrewandTodd.com, the stock market. AndrewandTodd.com are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They are the very best lenders in America. You need to find them. You need to talk to them. You need to get them on your side. 888-888-1172, because in this real estate market, in Virginia and California and everywhere in between, it's crazy. And you need a pre-qualification letter. I talked to you about the Wall Street Journal yesterday. The only way to get that letter is to get online with AndrewandTodd.com or call them at 888-888-1172. It won't take long. You'll walk in the door. You'll be able to make an offer. The seller will be able to know with great confidence you've got a loan lined up They're the best in the business. People from this show have been using them for 8 years. I've never had a complaint. Never had a complaint. From soup to nuts, they lend money. And they love talking to you. So please, andrewandtodd.com. The market yesterday, Dow was down 127. NASDAQ was up 11, S&P down 6. We're waiting on the Fed minutes today to see whether or not the market's going to go sideways. The 10-year Treasury is at 1.62%. Is it the same as it was yesterday? So they're waiting. It might go up, it might go down a little bit, but lowest interest rates in history. It is time to help people get into the house of their dreams. Let me also remind you over at HughHewitt.com, Food for the Poor banner is at the top. I can't urge you enough to go and make a contribution. You're all about to get a $1,400 check. Some of you will need every dollar of that. Many of you ought to remember that there are people who cannot even get anything to eat. And that's why the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I gave the largest donation we've ever done for Food for the Poor this year, and encourage you to do the same because people are desperate. Here's Angel Aloma talking about why people are leaving their country in droves.
It's very painful for them to leave their country, but when your child is starving, they feel pressured to do something for their children to survive. We have always depended on the listeners because they have never disappointed us in giving donations towards this, because this is not only helping them to survive, it's helping them also to stay happily in their own countries.
They don't want to move. They don't want to be one of those thousands of teenagers who are in the Dallas Convention Center. They want to stay, but they got to eat. Food for the Poor helps them eat. Rice and beans. $100 goes a long way in Honduras. Food for the Poor has been doing this for decades, I think 70 plus years. They know how to deliver that aid. You can call 855-359-4673, or you can go to HughHewitt.com. Now, a lot of you support missions work at your church, and I understand that. And thank you. Can you go a little bit further? You're about to get $1,400. You know, if you're giving it to your church, I understand. But can you go and give a little bit more to Food for the Poor? Because however efficient your mission work is at your church, and a lot of you are churchgoers, you might be on the mission committee. I was for years. You might know what great work you're doing. But Food for the Poor, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I talked to a philanthropist this week about how the biggest mistake in philanthropy is people decide they have to reinvent the wheel. That you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You have to find the wheel that rolls. Well, the wheel that rolls when it comes to poverty and food and the very basic necessity of life throughout the Caribbean and Central America, and especially in Honduras, ravaged by rains and COVID, is Food for the Poor. It began as a Catholic organization. It became evangelical. It merged. It works through every church and organization in Honduras. Your money will be curated well. It will be spent efficiently. It turns into food. It gets delivered. Angel's been running this thing for as long as I've been on the radio. And it's an operation of which you can be proud and in which you can repose the confidence that I believe it deserves. And I've checked it out. We support them. I hope you will as well. Food for the Poor banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Come back. Hour number 2 straight ahead. We're meeting in Alaska with China. What's Mike Gallagher got to say about that? Stay tuned, America.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Strongly, I get the clear impression that Biden is not leading the country. I believe that he's being led. Now, that is common sense observation. Most people are thinking the same thing, but I have a radio program, I get to say it. Biden is not leading the country. Now, if he was elected to lead the country and he's not leading the country, whom did we elect to lead the country? Or I should say, whom did we not elect to lead the country who is in fact leading the country? And how is that not unconstitutional?
This is related to the piece I wrote on Sunday. My Sunday piece deals with the exact question that you're asking, Eric, because it is my impression, as you have seemed to indicate, that Joe Biden is not in charge. I'm not even sure if he's in charge of changing his shorts on a daily basis, much less running the country.
I can answer that for you.
I don't say that to be
He doesn't change them on a daily basis. But go ahead.
I'm not saying that to be, damaging towards him. I see the little old man that they shuffle out to do the press appearance like he did yesterday, where he forgot the name of the defense secretary, forgot the name of the Pentagon, didn't really know who he was talking to or what he was talking about.
He knew it was a multi-sided shape. Does he have to know that it's exactly like a five sides? Does he have to know it's a pentagon? What if he said dodecahedron?
I would have given him more credit than
saying
that outfit over there.
If we found out that, Woodrow Wilson is in a coma and his wife is running the country, that's unconstitutional.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The Founding Fathers intended for government to be very small and non-intrusive. Look at Article 1, Section 8. Maybe someday they'll make a movie out of it. There are a handful of things the federal government's supposed to do, leaving everything else to the states and to the individuals themselves. That was the way this government has been set up. And now, if you add a value to mandates, government at all three levels takes half of what the American people make. Half. And you wonder why growth is slow? And how in the world do you expect to close the so-called income gap, wealth gap, with this kind of sluggish growth? How? It's really, really mind-boggling, the left. I remember Andy Stern, the former head of the SEIU union. Years ago, he said, well, Europe, as much as we like to make fun of them, they may have higher unemployment, but they have less inequality. So it's perfectly okay for people to have fewer jobs, as long as the ones who have jobs don't make a whole lot more than the next guy who has a job. Stunning. That's how they think. You don't believe in systemic racism, you're a bigot, and if you're black, you're an Uncle Tom. A bill that gives black farmers 120% debt relief just because they're black, not because they were discriminated against? Stunning.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Check out the governor of California. Here's Gavin Newsom standing in front of an empty Dodgers stadium. This is an unbelievable sight. Because of him, Dodger Stadium will probably stay open. And according to the embattled governor of California, even when the pandemic is over, it isn't going to be over. Because it's never over. We're never going to have normal again. I give you the governor of the state of California.
When this pandemic ends, and it will end soon, we're not going to go back to normal. Because I think we all agree, normal was never good enough. Normal accepts inequity. That's why Latinos are dying from COVID at a higher rate than any other racial or ethnic group. And while essential workers' wages aren't enough for them to afford the essentials. And why mothers have been leaving the workforce in staggering numbers. Look, our eyes are wide open to what's wrong. And so our journey back must also be a path to close those inequities. There is no economic recovery without economic justice.
Latinos are dying from COVID more than any other ethnic group because of inequity? Really? What, COVID is racist? A virus knows that I'm going to infect a Latino and kill a Latino more than a white guy? Got it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
I kind of am obligated to get into this story right now, which is the story of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. So I want to read this tweet here from Ben Means, an expert on the British monarchy. A lot of respect for the tradition and all of that. A lot of great friends in London and Great Britain. It's just not a primary concern of mine. And so I want to read from Ben Goldsmith's tweet, which I thought was terrific. The narrative being promoted by Meghan, friends of Meghan, and the leftist mainstream media and everyone else who hates the royal family and British traditions generally is that the royal couple were driven out of Britain because of snobbery and racism. This just isn't true. The British tabloid press and the British publicly initially adored the idea that a glamorous star from Suits was marrying into the royal family and got terribly excited by the novelty of their royal wedding in the chapel of Windsor Castle. They only started going off Meghan when they realized she was a pushy, ungrateful, entitled, gag-inducingly politically correct Hollywood gold digger who just gone and hitched herself up to Britain's favorite cheeky chappy warrior prince and turned him into an emasculated, humorless husk of his former self. It's actually from James Dellingpole, who I believe writes for Breitbart, amongst other places, and he interviewed me when we were in London for our campus tour. Very good guy. And so there's a lot of people that are kind of dissecting the interview yesterday. There's a lot of people that are going through the entire thing. I think just a broader question about this whole saga is, are we really now going to blame racism for the alleged oppressed life of Meghan Markle?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Populism didn't work.
So community organizers are okay, but Donald Trump populism not.
Right, correct. Right. And he was. It's incredible. I had forgotten that clip. It's incredible to go back to that moment because, of course, what did they say about Donald Trump for the 4 years after that? Is that he demanded explicit loyalty from everybody that worked for him, personal loyalty. Whereas her campaign phrase was literally, "I'm with her," not "I'm with the country," not "I'm with America," not "I'm even with the future," right? Not an ideology, not a philosophy,
not
just
a platform. Her.
Just her. Right.
Cultic.
Cultish, totally cultish. Right. And that's the same chart. They're very good at this. I mean, they are way better than we are at this. Is taking little things and projecting them onto their.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to our new affiliate in Lake City, Florida, 96.5 The Jet on WJTK in Lake City, the gateway to Florida. All you folks on the 10 and the 75 driving through town, welcome. Also to the new Z, 105.5, 1400 WNZE in Clarksville, Tennessee. It's great to have you on as well and to have all our friends at Fort Campbell listening, to our friends at KGMI in Bellingham. I mean, we're just adding affiliates every week. It's crazy. Well, David Cortman is joining me now, and I wanted everyone to know that you'll hear David occasionally on the Hugh Hewitt Show because the Alliance Defending Freedom is our partner and my friend. And I'd love to give David a hard time. I didn't get to give him a moot court before this most recent SCOTUS case, but I don't know if he argued it. Did you argue this case last week that you won, David?
I did not. Kristen Wagner, my associate, argued it and did a great job.
Well, congratulations. I don't know what your record is at the Supreme Court, Alliance Defending Freedom. I think it's like 13-1 over the last 10 years. What is it?
Yeah, we have won 12 cases in the last 10 years at the Supreme Court.
That's why Alliance Defending Freedom matters so much, America, because your religious liberty and First Amendment rights are at stake. Let's talk about last week's decision. 8-1. I have some sympathy for the Chief Justice's dissent. We'll come to that. But why don't you set up the facts in the ruling, David?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is basically about whether the government could violate someone's constitutional rights, admittedly so, and then if later on down the road they decide to change their policy, is there any recourse or does the case just go away? And in this case, it was a gentleman on a college campus outside of Atlanta basically was sharing his faith just peacefully, one-on-one, handing out pamphlets. They stopped him from doing so and said, this is illegal, all right, a college student on his own college campus. This is illegal to do so. You've got to go in these two tiny speech zones, which is basically the size of a sheet of paper on a football field in steel. He goes and does that. Someone complains and they shut him down again. So basically he has no free speech on his own college campus.
Now, this was a solid win. And the moment you described the facts to me the first time, David Cortman, that you came on for Alliance Defending and told me about this case, I said, well, that's blatantly unconstitutional. And it was. And you won at the district court, you won at the 11th Circuit. And then the state university decided, oh, we're going to get creamed at the Supreme Court. So they tried to moot the case out. Now, there's a doctrine called controversies capable of repetition yet evading review that I thought you would get heard on. Talk to us about the case and controversy requirement and why this case survived even after the state surrendered.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the question is, if the policy gets changed later, so you go into court, you say, look, they violated my constitutional rights. That was not at issue. Everybody understood that. Well, if they change the policy later and they say, okay, now this is a past violation, we've changed the policy, there's nothing else to see here, go away. And our whole response was, well, that cannot be. It cannot be that, for example, if you paid $1 for a religious flyer and handed it out, or you paid $1 for bus fare to get there, you could keep the case going on that $1 of actual damage. But if your constitutional right was violated, that's not sufficient to keep the case going. That's what we argued. That's what we won on.
Now, you did, and the court did say, if you make a plea for nominal damages, the case survives. And the Chief Justice's dissent is worried that now every 1983 case is going to make that plea. I don't know why he's worried, because it's just another plea. But that is, you did change fundamentally how people are going to plead constitutional cases under Section 1983, didn't you?
Well, you know, I would say no. And the reason I say that is the majority of circuit courts around the country, and they're divided up obviously all over the country, have already had this rule, and there has been no floodgates that's been opened. But I think more importantly, though, what worries me on the flip side, and obviously the Chief is a brilliant jurist, is that you'd have to come down to and say that the government could violate your constitutional rights, admittedly do so, and months, if not years later, finally change their mind and then not be accountable for it. That seems to be not the way we want to go, because that encourages violations from the government and allows them to get away with it without doing anything to, you know, the person whose rights they violated. And that counts outside of colleges. It counts in prisons and zoning and all different types of disputes, which many other groups, you know, joined us in.
Now, I want to go down the rabbit hole one more time before we come back up to the surface and talk about what colleges, universities, and all public spaces need to take away. The rabbit hole is simply this. I teach wrongs capable of repetition yet evading review every semester that I teach con law. I've been doing it for 25 years. Why did that argument, did Kristen make that argument to the court saying, look, they can't do this. This is classic wrong capable of repetition yet evading review. Did that argument even get aired out? Or did we lose David? It appears we lost David Cortman. Oh, his phone dropped. We'll call him right back. And so the good news is, yeah, I don't know if it got argued, but the good news is it was an 8-1 jam down. An 8-1 win sends a message, a neon light blinking in the dark that sends a message to every public institution in America. You may not discriminate against religious speech. You frankly can't discriminate against speech, period, either because of the viewpoint being expressed or the category. So, David, I was just asking if any part of the argument concerned, look, this is a wrong capable of repetition yet evading review. Did that ever even come up?
It did not, and the reason it did not is under that doctrine, it has to be able to be repeated to the same person, and Chike already graduated. And so there are circumstances where that may apply, but it's just not in this way.
It took so long. Okay, so now tell me the message that every public entity ought to take away from this case regarding speech.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is that, you know, if you have a policy that violates someone's free speech rights, you ought to take a look at it seriously. ADF sent a letter several years ago to this exact college and said, hey, we were looking at your policies, and they violate the Constitution in like 6 different ways. And they just basically ignored us.
So they already had notice. But the key is that if someone's speaking on your campus, especially students who have a right to be there, you've got to give them leeway to say, hey, this is just like their town. This is just like the place they live, and that carries protection of the Constitution with it.
And so, they shouldn't be regulating speech in any great degree. There are time, place, and manner restrictions. You can't be talking in the library, right? People understand that. You can't be giving a speech in the library. It's not Hyde Corner. But if you're going to have speech on campus and hand out flyers, and there's a lot of speech on every campus in America. People are always handing out flyers. It's like Flyer Central. They cannot single out religious speech for discrimination. Why does that even get started, David Cortman?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. You look at any college campus, students are, have petitions, whatever, political issues, whatever, talking about everything. And then you say, well, gee, I don't like this particular type of speech, which ironically, in the 60s and 70s, that's where all the demonstrations and speeches took place, because that's the center of the marketplace of ideas. That's where our younger generation is learning. But all of a sudden now, if it's religious speech and we don't like it, we need to shut it down, even though all this other speech is going on.
So free speech at Berkeley began in 1963, the free speech movement. Now ADF has an entire department devoted. And by the way, if you want to support ADF, go to adflegal.org and put /Hewitt there. It'll take you to the donation page. But just generally find out what they're up to. They're the best not-for-profit legal organization in America. They are constantly slandered by the left because they win, they win, they win. David works and works and works. You got Matt Bowman now back with you, so you've had to up your game again, right? Matt's probably a pain in the neck to work with.
Matt's great, does a great job.
I know, but he's always working. You can't beat him there to work, and you can't go home after it, because he's always there. I don't know what he does for a living, and his family is they're in a ditch somewhere. Matt's got to go home. But David, do you have a division now devoted to just free speech cases?
We do. We've got several. We've got an entire division just on college campuses. We've got other divisions that handle free speech and other issues outside of that. So we have teams of lawyers who work solely on these issues and become experts in that particular field.
Now, the ESG movement greatly alarms me. The corporate governance that says we're going to be woke. It is greatly threatening corporations that support religious free speech and corporations that support charities and churches. What are you doing about ESG? Does ADF have a strategy for that?
We actually are looking at that now, and that's something that your listeners need to be educated on, because what's happening is the left is so aggressive. We hear about cancel culture, we hear about silencing. The answer to speech that you don't like is other speech. You have civil discussions, no name calling, no accusations. You just talk through the issues. It's how people learn. It's how they're supposed to get educated on things. But it is dangerous now that you hear, well, this person said something we don't agree with, and so you cancel their account or you won't serve them anymore, whatever it happens to be. That is something extremely dangerous. It's getting more and more so as each day goes on.
And the legal recourse for that, the solution, listen to me, write it down. ADF is going to be the people that comes up with the solution. ADFlegal.org, Alliance Defends on Twitter. David Cortman, always a pleasure. Go tell Matt to go home. I'll be right back. I love Matt Bowman. It's just the guy works harder than anyone I've ever met. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Maybe Jordan Lawrence works harder. I don't know.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
If the president or the ostensible president is not behaving as the president, the country needs to know, is the vice president in charge? So it strikes me we have a constitutional crisis. I don't know how you get around it.
So let me give you the best guess that I can kind of piece together. All of Capitol Hill is sitting behind a fence with razor wire on top of it. Joe Biden is not taking public meetings. He is barely having public appearances, and even those are tightly controlled. He shows up with note cards in his pocket when he loses his way. He pulls the note cards out. He can't even read what's on the note cards. Kamala Harris is taking all of the heads of state meetings. She's making all the phone calls. She's the one interacting with other heads of state across the world. Barack Obama never left Washington, D.C. unlike other presidents. Most presidents leave the Capitol once their time in office is over. Susan Rice, who was his most loyal foot soldier of all of the Obama administration officials, she went out on 9/11 of 2012, lied to the entire nation on all the television shows about the Benghazi attack, suffered no wrongdoing for that. In fact, she got promoted. She left the ambassadorship that she had in the UN, and she came into the White House staff after that event was carried out. So you've got someone who's very loyal, who is now Joe Biden's domestic policy chief advisor. And my guess is that she's also probably the author or responsible for the authoring of most of the executive orders that the executive branch has issued since he's been in office. My hunch is that President Obama is pulling the strings vis-a-vis Susan Rice.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
I looked at the headline the gentleman was calling about. This is in Newsweek. Evanston is paying reparations of $25,000 to black residents. They say that's not enough. Now, I said that to the gentleman without even seeing this headline. They say that's not enough. And this is what we're going to be facing. You know, decades ago, a congressman named John Conyers would introduce a bill at the beginning of Congress every 2 years for reparations. And it was a joke. And every year he'd do it. And every year he'd do it. Never in a million years did I ever think we'd get to the point where people are seriously taking this, where serious people are taking this seriously. Where do you start with this? I've heard that this is for 400 years of slavery. I heard 250 years of slavery. America didn't become a country until 1787. Slavery ended 1865. That's not 400 years. That's not 250 years. Government didn't own slaves. States didn't own slaves. Individuals owned slaves. And Obama said that in his view, reparations were justified. Of course they were justified. To the slaves themselves or to their legal heirs, good luck trying to find them.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, special St. Patrick's Day bonus for you. I'm joined by Glenn Youngkin, the next governor of Virginia. And Glenn and I are both members of the Commonwealth, citizens of the Commonwealth. And I am 100% behind him in his campaign because the Commonwealth is on a bad path. Glenn, welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Good St. Patrick's Day to you.
Hugh, thank you for having me with you.
Well, I got to begin by telling you, when I was talking with the fetching Mrs. Hewitt about getting involved and supporting you, we went and looked at your website, and she saw these three boys of yours along with your beautiful daughter and your wife. And she took a look at those three boys and she said, that's a lot of traffic tickets and broken bumpers and trips to the emergency room. Is she right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not supposed to, but I am so my kids and I guys done a nice job.
You know, it's not working. We're going to call you back because your Skype is breaking up. And so I want to make sure that we get you and are able to record it correctly, Glenn. We're only getting like every half of the Skype thing. That's the trouble with Skype. So I'll try to, we'll call you on the back line. I prefer Skype. This happened yesterday. I was talking to Dana Perino from the Nixon Library, and we got started 45 minutes late because Skype it's a bandwidth issue. And if the bandwidth isn't there at both ends, and of course the studio is equipped with a lot of bandwidth, it's very easy to do. But if it's not equipped with enough bandwidth, it's kind of a nightmare. Glenn Youngkin does have this amazing family, though. For 30 years, they've lived in Northern Virginia, and they've got this. Just go to Youngkin, Young K-I-N, Young K-I-N, Youngkin for Governor. All right, Glenn, now we got you back. We'll make Skype work someday. Let's go back to that question about your boys. They look wonderful, but I raised 2 boys. There can be a lot of phone calls in the middle of the night involving bumpers and trouble.
Well, in order to protect my great guys, they've done a really good job through their adolescent years and into their 20s, and so no, we're really proud of them. And I've just been blessed with a great family, and they're all in here. So this is great fun for all of us to be running for governor.
Now, are you deploying them throughout the Commonwealth? When you've got 4 kids and a wonderful wife, you really do have 6 times the candidate if they like it. Are they into it?
They're into it now. They're all in school, different places, and so my wife is actually campaigning yesterday and today in another spot, and my oldest son Grant is joining me on the road next week.
That's
so they're episodically joining us. It's great.
Now, one technical issue before we talk some policy. When I signed up to be a delegate, which is Virginia's got the worst primary system in America. I've covered all 50 states. It's crazy how we nominate people. Will you explain to people who are listening in Virginia or who have family, they're listening across the country on 400 affiliates, that they can call in Virginia? How do they get to participate in nominating you to be the Republican candidate for governor?
First they come to our website, which is youngkinforgovernor.com, and we have a very easy how to get registered to be a delegate, and we can actually have a help desk that can help you through it. That's number 1. Number 2, you'll sign up over the course of the next couple weeks, and we'll help you get your form filed with your local county. And then you'll get your form filed, and you'll be a delegate. And then you'll come back on May the 8th, and there will be one of 37 polling locations, one near you. And you'll come by on that Saturday, and you'll drop off your ballot. The ballot will be rank-ordered choice as opposed to selecting one candidate. You pick 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And that's all you do. And so I'm actually pleased that we've got this settled. Yes, it took an enormous amount of time, and it's been confusing for folks, but we have a process, and now we're running to win.
Now, Youngkinforgovernor.com will help people. Will they send you the ballot once you sign up as a delegate, as both the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I have done?
Yes, they will ask you to come and fill it out. So you will receive a ballot. And I think they will not send it to you, but that hasn't been settled finally. I would expect that folks are going to come to the polling location. They'll be handed a ballot, and you will fill it out.
All right. Now, let's get to some policy. Yesterday, Ralph Northam, who is really one of the worst governors in America, I know a nice guy, bad governor, signed a law allowing felons to vote. And look, that's an interesting issue. There's a lot of things people can talk about when felons can vote, not vote. But is that the number one thing facing Virginia right now? The roads don't work. The state is in fiscal chaos, and he's signing bills about Virginians voting.
Yeah, it is amazing where our Democrat-led House, Senate, and our governor are spending their time. We are in the middle of a pandemic, and we have schools closed. We have a vaccine that has been terribly distributed. Our DMVs don't work. We can't process unemployment claims. And we have Virginians hurting, and we are expanding voting rights to people that are still under their sentence for a felony. And this is just where the Democrats choose to spend their time. Hugh, over the course of the last 3 legislative cycles, we've seen the Democrats who have control of both houses absolutely run through a wish list like a combine through a wheat field of everything they've ever wanted and try to jam it through. And it has been absolutely awful for our Commonwealth. And that's why I'm running for governor. This is why we're doing this, is to take back our beloved Commonwealth and actually focus on the things that really matter, like getting our kids back in school, getting our economy going, actually having job opportunities for all Virginians. This is where we have to spend our time, Hugh.
Just had an amazing moment this week, Glenn Youngkin, with a bond trader in L.A. who's retiring. Went to school with me, and he's hit the time where the magic retirement occurs, like when you exited the Carlyle Group, and he's going to move. And a lot of Californians do that, like I did in 2016. You leave California, go find a tax-friendly state and a place that you want to live. And I moved to the Commonwealth. And he said, absolutely not. Their taxes are going up, and their government's in the hands of the Democrats. Tennessee, Florida, somewhere else, not Virginia. Have you been hearing that a lot? Virginia went from a place to move to a place to flee from.
That is the absolute truth. And sadly, because we have had a slow economy and poor job growth, because our cost of living continues to go up, because we, in fact, see a real threat to right to work under this Democrat-led House and Senate and governor, we are seeing families actually leave Virginia faster than they move in. We have had net migration out of Virginia of families, and it is a canary in the coal mine for the future of our great Commonwealth. And Hugh, this is a huge problem, a giant problem. This is why we're going to change this, because Virginia used to be one of the greatest states in America, and now people leave Virginia and they go to Tennessee and North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and Texas in pursuit of jobs, cost of living, and lifestyle. And we've just got to turn this around.
Now, there's a fundamental problem that's a good problem to have. The tech business is coming, as you well know from your time running a venture firm and a capital investment firm, the Carlyle Group. You know well that it's a huge deal for Amazon to come to Arlington, Virginia. A huge deal. And the tech center out by Dulles, huge deal. But the people that come with those companies are typically young millennials and coders and software engineers and young people looking to rise in the world. And they bring West Coast politics to the East Coast. How are you going to talk to them, Glenn Youngkin, about why they want to keep Virginia the way it was and not do what happened in Colorado? Colorado went from red to purple and now blue because of the Californians who moved there.
Yeah, I think the first thing we have to do is reach out to all Virginians. And what we found is the Republican Party over the last 11 years has found new and inventive ways to lose statewide elections. And at the core of it is recognizing we have had demographic shifts. We actually have had a different group of people become the majority population in Virginia, predominantly in Northern Virginia, predominantly non-white. And the Republican Party has done a poor job in connecting, listening, and in fact, helping everyone understand we have shared values, small government, not large government, low taxes, low regulations, meritocracy in our schools, the fact that we actually have to stand up for our constitutional rights. And these kinds of values aren't limited to a small group of people. These are predominantly universal views that so many people have. And the Republican Party has done a bad job in connecting with people who are both millennials and rising up in their careers, but also the minority population. And this is what we've been focused on in the campaign.
Last question. You just mentioned it. Schools are closed in a lot of Northern Virginia. I had Mary Catherine Ham on yesterday, CNN analyst, and she's fuming. Everyone's fuming online. There is no reason scientifically to have closed schools. Is this an issue in the campaign?
It's a huge issue in the campaign, and it is absolutely a bipartisan issue here. Why are our schools closed when we've actually seen schools in Florida open since last August? And I was talking to Governor DeSantis about 10 days ago, and I asked him, I said, Governor, how'd you get your schools open? And he said, I told them to open, and then I reminded them all what happened when the air traffic controllers didn't go back to work with Ronald Reagan. You got to go back to work, folks. It's best for our kids. And the Virginia kids absolutely have been suffering academically and emotionally, and it's had a terrible impact on families. And you know that over 3 million women have dropped out of the workforce over the last year across this country because of the pandemic and the pressures put on them. And we've got to get this moving. We've got to get the schools open now in Virginia, or otherwise Virginia kids are going to be further hurt, and it's not fair.
Glenn Youngkin, keep coming back. Look forward to working with you as you become the Republican nominee for governor and then get down to the State House in Richmond. Good to talk to you, Glenn. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh. Welcome back, America, on St. Patrick's Day. It's so good to have a Gallagher, Congressman Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin. Congressman, how are you and where are you?
Top of the morning to you. I'm in Washington, D.C.
You're not wearing any green.
I know. I need to rectify that.
Well, you got green in the picture behind you, but honestly, your name Gallagher.
I know. I was a little bit rushed, Hugh. I went for a run this morning, and you'll never guess who I saw.
Tom Cotton out walking the dog?
No, it's Chad Henne. Chad Henne, he ran 13 yards and nobody touched him.
Okay. Did you see Corey Lindsey? Because he ran away from Green Bay to San Diego. Did you see that? Because that guy, he played 70% of the snaps for Green Bay and he left, and they lost a 4th-round draft choice. You know why? They don't do anything on the 4th round, much less 4th down. There you go. Here we go.
There it is.
All right, there it is. Boom. Congressman, I want to talk about this meeting in Anchorage. There's a meeting in Anchorage between Tony Blinken and Secretary Austin, the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense, with a couple of people from the People's Republic of China. Why is it in Anchorage? What are they talking about? What worries you?
Well, Anchorage is an appropriately frosty venue for the conversation, I would say. I think the important thing to realize about this meeting, well, the most important thing for the administration to keep in mind is to maintain the hard line. I know that sounds simple, but sending a message that this administration is prepared to continue the intense and strong competition with the Chinese Communist Party that the previous administration initiated, and that it won't be fooled into a more cooperative relationship, or what the Chinese refer to as a win-win relationship, is the most important signal to send to their Chinese counterparts. Towards that end, the fact that that former Secretary of State John Kerry is not going is actually an encouraging sign to me, because it tells me that this will not be a discussion about climate change. Instead, it could be a discussion about the fact that the CCP needs to stop its theft of our intellectual property, particularly in key technological areas like AI, microelectronics, batteries, and hypersonics. The other thing I'd note, it was great to see the administration talk to our allies first. They met with the Quad prior to meeting with China. I thought that sent a particularly important signal. And Kurt Campbell, the top Asia official on the NSC, just said that China needs to end its economic pressure on Australia, a member of the Quad and one of our closest partners, before we can even think about improving relationships. And so the final thing I'd say, Hugh, is we may see a small deal emerge from this, which you could imagine the administration brokering some deal that brings what are called the 2 mics to Canadians that are held in Chinese jail in return for Meng Wanzhou, the chief financial officer in Huawei, who's in Canada right now. But I wouldn't expect some grand, strategic deal. And in fact, China is claiming this as a strategic level dialogue, but we are not affirming that idea, which means we're essentially downgrading its importance. So hard line is what I hope the administration will communicate to their counterparts.
And there's one part of my bingo card you didn't hit, Congressman, which is the nation state of Taiwan. And I know we have a one China, two governments policy, but Politico ran an article yesterday that is nothing short of alarming. It quotes unnamed senior defense officials suggesting that the PRC is getting ready to invade Taiwan on an accelerated timeline. And it did not indicate that the United States would come to the defense of Taiwan. Now, I sat down with Mike Pompeo in his first interview when he was CIA director, and then in an early interview when he was Secretary of State. I asked him both times, what about Taiwan? And he said, without hesitation, we will live up to our treaty agreements, which include defense of the island. Is the Biden administration telegraphing early and often that the PRC may not use force against Taiwan without the United States intervening?
Well, Admiral Davidson, our head military official in Indo-PACOM, the commander of Indo-PACOM, testified before Congress last week, and in public testimony before the Senate prior to him coming to the Armed Services Committee in the House, he said that he believes that the CCP might make a move on Taiwan within 6 years. 6 years, Hugh. So we now have a high-level military official publicly affirming that sense within the administration and within the intelligence community that this could be something that happens within the decade. The Chinese refer to this decade as a period of strategic opportunity. And no doubt, Hugh, I think they feel emboldened, remarkably, after a year in which they unleashed coronavirus on the world. they still feel like they have an opportunity to press the limit and that they're not going to experience pushback from the West. I have not yet seen the forceful defense of Taiwan from this administration that I think we need. But more than anything else, beyond statements reaffirming our commitment to Taiwan, both from Congress and the administration, we need to work to put in place the defense systems and equipment throughout the First Island chain and in Taiwan that deter the Chinese Communist Party by denial. In other words, that make it clear that even if they tried to make a move on Taiwan, that they would fail, that the cost would be so severe that they shouldn't even think about that. And right now, we do not have that defense architecture in place, in large part because we haven't fielded the missile systems that are necessary to make that possible. So I'm hoping more than anything else, the Defense Department, which currently seems to be wasting a lot of time fighting some weird culture war or mean tweeting against Tucker Carlson, will focus on fielding a posture of deterrence by denial in the First Island chain that makes it impossible for Xi to effectuate unification of Taiwan with the mainland by force.
Now, Congressman Gallagher, let's assume for a moment that General Secretary Xi, who is going to be General Secretary for as long as he's alive unless there's a coup, has put at the top of his list as the accomplishment that he wants in history that he reunified China and he got Taiwan back, and that he intends to take the island one way or the other within 6 to 10 years, whether by armed invasion or by economic coercion or a combination thereof. What will the United States do? What do you want them to do if he initiates hostilities as Mao did over the Straits of Formosa with artillery in the 50s? What do you want the United States to do at that moment?
I think it's absolutely essential that we send an unequivocal signal that we, in concert with our allies, will not allow that to happen, and that Congress step up to the table. And I'm not saying we need to authorize proactively an AUMF in order to defend Taiwan, but we should be prepared to rally the American people to that effort, if indeed it comes to that, because my own view really is twofold. One, I think you're right to suggest that this is Xi's legacy issue. This is how he will go down in the history books, and he communicates this openly. It's not like he's hiding it. It is something he communicates repeatedly and openly. And two, that Taiwan is really the new Berlin, that it occupies such a position of importance that if we were to allow Xi to invade Taiwan with minimal or token resistance from the West, all of American credibility on the world stage would completely collapse. And I think we have a lot of work to do, Hugh, in terms of convincing the American public about the strategic importance of Taiwan, so that if the worst case scenario unfolds, we will be able to stand together as a country in defense of the West, in defense of Western civilization, because that's really what we're talking about here, Hugh. And I think there's an economic component of this, too, that we haven't yet explained. Taiwan is, of course, the global hub of semiconductor manufacturing. Semiconductors are essential for everything on the low end, whether it's electric vehicles, or on the high end, whether it's fancy military equipment. And the fact is, by taking over Taiwan, Xi could hold the rest of the world hostage by assuming control of TSMC, the world's largest semiconductor manufacturer. There's also a related question, Hugh, of how we bring some of that semiconductor manufacturing back here to the United States. I'm co-chairing a task force on the Armed Services Committee on supply chain vulnerability. We had our first hearing last week with Democrat and Republican former defense officials. And more than anything else, we heard about the critical importance of semiconductors, of chips going forward for the United States. So we're going to have to invest some money in order to have that domestic production capability, because it is very expensive, which leads me to another tragedy, Hugh. The fact is we just spent $2 trillion bailing out profligate, progressive states, wiping out San Francisco's debts, paying federal employees not to work if the teachers union have shut down the school district where their kids go to school. And we couldn't even carve out $20 to $30 billion for a domestic semiconductor chip fabrication site in the United States. It's like we spent all of our money on everything except for the things we need in order to survive in this geopolitical competition with China. It's maddening, Hugh. And now we're about to waste $4 trillion on an infrastructure bill that I guarantee you will not prioritize the Defense Department. And I guarantee you, Hugh, the Democrats are going to come to us in a few months and say, you know what? We don't have enough money. We need to cut the top line of the defense budget because we just don't have enough money. Are you kidding?
You know, if any state governor is listening with a Republican legislature, they will take the money that is coming from Washington, D.C., and they will build that semiconductor plant. They will build a semiconductor campus to rival any campus in the world. And they will build a shipyard, Mike. They will build what the federal government has refused to build in an inversion of roles. The federal government will pay for the states, but the states can build. Have you talked to anybody in Wisconsin about doubling the size of your shipyard up there in your district, or about putting a semiconductor plant there? Because they're getting enough money to do that.
Well, we need to build dry docks here domestically where we repair our ships. We build those dry docks, guess where? In China, Hugh. I mean, it's madness. And then we cut them into 3 pieces and we have to ship them back across the Pacific Ocean. So, yes, I think particularly for Midwestern states, we have a huge opportunity right now. There's been some debate right now about the fallow Foxconn facility in Wisconsin and whether that could be repurposed into a semiconductor hub. It is my belief, Hugh, that with the right combination of state tax incentives, federal investment, and will on the part of state and federal officials, we could bring that manufacturing to the industrial Midwest, and it's absolutely essential for our national security. We are going to need some flexibility, however, on environmental regulations, because this can be a dirty enterprise. So we do have to figure this out so that we're doing right by the environment without getting mired in endless environmental lawsuits and things like that.
Well, I hope every governor is listening. I want to close Mike Gallagher again by talking about Corey Linsley. The Packers lose their center every 3 years. I mean, we got J.C. Tretter from the Packers, a great center. Now you've lost Corey Linsley. Why don't centers want to play with Aaron Rodgers?
Well, Aaron Rodgers is so good, he really doesn't need protection. But, just to close out, we have no time to waste when it comes to semiconductors. We cannot be slow like the Browns defense chasing after old man Henne on 3rd and 15.
You know, you can't hurt me on this stuff. You can't hurt me because we just signed John Johnson, the best safety in the draft and free agency. We are going to the Super Bowl. I hope the ancient Packers make their way there so we can crush them and put this to end forever. Congressman Gallagher, talk to you next week. Thank you as always. It's always China time with Mike Gallagher, and I like that. It's also Relief Factor time. Hey, my new affiliates. I like to make sure I get the numbers right. 96.5 The Jet. WJTK in Lake City, Florida, right there by the 75 and the 10, gateway to Florida. And to my New Z 105.5 and 1400 in Clarksville, Tennessee. I love that New Z thing. New Z. 3 times a day. Bellingham heard about this last week. Bellingham, Washington, my new affiliate up there. KGMI. I talk about Relief Factor every hour. They're a sponsor of the show. You know, the FCC makes me disclose that. I'm happy to disclose that. They sponsor this spot. And I, though, don't have to take it. And I do take it every day because it works. Now, I'm a very slow runner. I used to be a pretty fast runner. Now I'm slow. In my 60s. Did a half marathon 2 weeks ago. Did 10 and 6 this weekend. Took Monday and Tuesday off. I may slog around this afternoon. I may not. It's a lot of workout on the weekend. But I'm recovering better because of ReliefFactor.com. You will, too. You'll feel better after exercise and every morning if you take your ReliefFactor.com 1995. Come right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Check out the governor of California. Here's Gavin Newsom standing in front of an empty Dodgers stadium. This is an unbelievable sight. Because of him, Dodger Stadium will probably stay open. And according to the embattled governor of California, even when the pandemic is over, it isn't going to be over. Because it's never over. We're never going to have normal again. I give you the governor of the state of California.
You know, when this pandemic ends, and it will end soon, we're not going to go back to normal. Because I think we all agree, normal was never good enough. You know, normal accepts inequity. That's why Latinos are dying from COVID at a higher rate than any other racial or ethnic group. And while essential workers' wages aren't enough for them to afford the essentials. And why mothers Mothers have been leaving the workforce in staggering numbers. Look, our eyes are wide open to what's wrong. And so our journey back must also be a path to close those inequities. There is no economic recovery without economic justice.
Latinos are dying from COVID more than any other ethnic group because of inequity? Really? What, COVID is racist? A virus knows that I'm going to infect a Latino and kill a Latino more than a white guy? Got it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
I kind of am obligated to get into this story right now, which is the story of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. So I want to read this tweet here from Ben Means, an expert on the British monarchy. A lot of respect for the tradition and all of that. A lot of great friends in London and Great Britain. It's just not a primary concern of mine. And so I want to read from Ben Goldsmith's tweet, which I thought was terrific. The narrative being promoted by Meghan, friends of Meghan, and the leftist mainstream media and everyone else who hates the royal family and British traditions generally is that the royal couple were driven out of Britain because of snobbery and racism. This just isn't true. The British tabloid press and the British publicly initially adored the idea that a glamorous star from Suits was marrying into the royal family and got terribly excited by the novelty of their royal wedding in the chapel of Windsor Castle. They only started going off Meghan
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt, joined as I am most weeks by Josh Kraushaar, Hotline Josh on Twitter. He works for, of course, National Journal. Good morning, Josh. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Hugh.
It looks to me like the Republicans have figured out how to go after the Democrats, which is open the schools and close the borders. Is that the consistent message you're hearing from Republicans?
Consistent, I'm not sure. I mean, Republicans, I think, are a little bit off message, trying to figure out, you hear different things from different lawmakers, different politicians, but the schools issue is one. We've talked about this on the show. I've written about it many times. That is a big problem. Joe Biden, announced that, teachers would be prioritized to getting the vaccine by the end of this month. And, and hinted that most schools, at least K-8 schools, would be open. There are schools that are opening, but they're doing 2-day-a-week models, hybrid models. Some large school systems like my own in Fairfax aren't even fully committing to a full 5-day-a-week schedule in the fall. So this is going to be an issue that's not going away, at least in the 2021 year. And it is a big political vulnerability for Democrats. And yeah, you look at the contrast with the Biden administration struggling to figure out a plan on how to stem the tide of migrants coming from the border. And, you're having a repeat of what happened during the end of the Obama administration, but except this time it doesn't seem like there's as much imperative to really stop the flow. So these are two big vulnerabilities for the administration. I think education is a longer term one because it's going to be when we get to the fall and we don't have full 5-day-a-week schooling that it's going to be a big issue for some of these elections in 2021. The border is always going to be an issue for Biden, and I think he's got to worry about getting tougher and not allowing this huge wave of migrants doing something.
The border is kind of. I think the border is baked into American politics, but the school issue is new, Josh. I think that is going to define Democrats for a generation. The brand damage to teachers' unions is immense. I want to ask you about Glenn Youngkin. Now, I just had him on again. I think I'll vote for him. I'm a Commonwealth voter. I'm a citizen of Virginia. What do you make of the Youngkin campaign thus far in the Republican Party in Virginia?
So look, in Virginia, Republicans decided to go with a convention. You have to actually go and try to be a delegate to participate in the Republican nomination process. And that's a challenge for Youngkin because He's a businessman, a very successful executive at the Carlyle Group, has a lot of money, but that doesn't play as much of a factor in a convention where you have a smaller number of Republicans deciding the nomination. There's another businessman, Pete Snyder, who also has quite a bit of money. He's also airing TV ads in Virginia, has a very politically seasoned staff of operatives working around him. I think Snyder has a better chance to win the convention, to win the nomination. You also have the former State House Speaker, Kirk Cox, a little more of an establishment guy running in that convention. But, Youngkin is someone, if it was a primary and the money that he has, certainly would have a good shot. But at these conventions, you really need to win over relationships with a lot of.
Although they've changed the rules, Josh. They've changed the rules. So I've registered to be a delegate at the convention. I'll never go to the convention. I'll get to vote on the day of the convention because I've registered. It's actually a blocking and tackling exercise. The campaign that does the best in the blocking and tackling of IDing, getting people registered. Youngkin's virtual campaign's pretty good on that. I haven't checked out Snyder's. Have you compared and contrasted them yet?
Yeah, Snyder has gotten high grades from the Republicans I've talked to. He's someone who, on an operational level, is at the top of the Republican list. Youngkin is a newcomer to politics. He was a business guy, and Snyder ran for lieutenant governor unsuccessfully before. And then Cox is a political lifer. He has the relationships from his time as a state legislator and time as Speaker of the House. So that's an advantage with some of these people that that are going to be voting at the conventions.
Okay, so I want to close by asking you about the relief package. It tells states, here's a bunch of money. I asked Larry Hogan this week, what are you going to do with your 3.9? He said, I don't know what I'm allowed to do with it. In fact, they're not allowed to cut taxes according to the Congress. That's an unconstitutional string attached via the spending clause, if I understand Sebelius at all. Do you think Republican attorney generals will be attacking this package for the strings that are attached?
Yeah, I've heard the same thing you were talking about, Hugh, that the Republican attorneys general are talking about a possible lawsuit in terms of the restrictions on how they can spend the money. So I don't know the legal side of it. Politically, I think there is going to be pressure to or at least Democrats may draw some contrast in trying to promote how their blue state governors are spending the money. But no, look, this was one of the most unpopular provisions in the legislation was the big lump sum given to states and local governments, and especially at a time when a lot of states didn't really need it. The economic forecasts were not as dire. The economic outcome wasn't as dire as the forecast originally suggested. So, yeah, I think it's a political issue, but I'm not sure if the legal fight will be successful.
I think it's a Tea Party 2.0 is going to arise out of the schools issue and out of this attempt to take over the states. It's really just a takeover of the states. And I think there's enough constitutionalism left in the American people that they're going to rebel on that. Josh Kraushaar, follow him on Twitter, Hotline Josh. Read about him at the National Journal. Thank you, Josh. I'm coming back with James Timken, who wants to be the next senator from Ohio. There are a lot of people who want to do that. We'll talk with one of them. John Allen and Amie Parnes join me as well. They're bestseller Lucky on the charts all over the United States. Don't go anywhere. There's a lot ahead in hour number 3 of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hughiverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hughiverse.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
NBC Los Angeles, food for less, and 2 Los Angeles Ralph's stores, Ralph's is a major supermarket chain here, to close in May. The Kroger Company announced 3 store closing in Los Angeles following an earlier decision to close a Ralph's and a Food for Less in Long Beach. Now, why would that be? The move follows the Los Angeles City Council's grocery store workers' hero pay vote on March 3rd. That's an ordinance that requires large grocery and pharmacy retailers to offer employees an additional $5 per hour in hazard pay amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So you see, it worked. We are forcing you, I don't know what right they have, the whole thing. It is so amazing. We are going to tell private companies how much they have to pay their workers. They may not be able, and they will close, and the workers will be then unemployed, but we don't care. That's what I mean, the callousness. The left lives to feel good about itself. This is the self-esteem movement as a monster. Self-esteem movement was founded by a liberal Democrat, John Vasconcellos, I think in the 1980s, as a member of the California State Senate.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau of Yankee Institute for Townhall.com. Matt Meyer is president of the Berkeley Federation of Teachers, a union leading the effort to keep children at home, insisting that reopening schools is just too unsafe. So jaws dropped when video of him was seen taking his own daughter to in-person preschool. The episode highlights the hypocrisy and cynicism evident in too much COVID policy, especially in education. School districts with strong teachers' unions are less likely to hold in-person classes. Meanwhile, our children remain trapped at home, suffering from social isolation and learning loss. The achievement gap has increased, and there's a worsening youth mental health crisis. Parents have stood by helplessly at the mercy of the unions, even as the CDC admits that schools can reopen safely. In-person learning shouldn't be reserved for children of the privileged. Our kids deserve policies that put their rightful needs over the self-serving demands of union elites. I'm Carol Platt-Liebau.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Earlier today, the White House Chief of Staff, Ronald Klain, tweeted out the front page of the New York Times. Now, listen, I didn't see this because I don't read the New York Times, but here's the cover of the front page of the New York Times. Above the fold, big headline, Eric Hansen's going to lose his mind. My operations manager is going to flip his lid when he hears this. Eric, the headline of the New York Times, President's goal, July 4th gatherings with close family. That's the president's goal. And the White House Chief of Staff tweeted, this is what we are working toward. Oh, really? That's what we are working toward? There ain't no we. You got a mouse in your pocket? Because we're doing that. Listen, I get vaccinated, I'm done. And I don't, come arrest me if I'm going to be with my family, inside rather than outside. Do you have any comprehension how nuts this is? What we're working toward? And the New York Times, there they are. They're so proud of themselves over there, the old gray lady. Here's our headline, President's goal, 4th of July gatherings with close family outside. Just a few of you now, but that's what we're working towards. These people are lunatics, and Americans know it. That's the best part.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Oprah Winfrey, the fact that Oprah tolerated this whole conversation is so unbelievably disappointing. And I'll get to that. But first, I want to play this tape right here of Meghan Markle, same as, making the claim that there were racist remarks against her child's skin color. But she won't say who said it because she's doing maybe a Jussie Smollett thing. Play cut 8.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born. That was relayed to me from Harry. Those were conversations that family had with him.
If he were too brown, that would be a problem. Are you saying that?
I wasn't able to follow up with why, but that if that's the assumption you're making, I think that feels like a pretty safe one.
Feels like a safe one. Megan, you are now allowing your feelings, I guess I should say, to dictate an accusation of a family that largely, by all evidence available, embraced you. What an unbelievably ungrateful person you are. No gratitude. Perfect leftist, no gratitude.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The Founding Fathers intended for government to be very small and non-intrusive. Look at Article 1, Section 8. Maybe someday they'll make a movie out of it. There are a handful of things the federal government's supposed to do, leaving everything else to the states and to the individuals themselves. That was the way this government has been set up. And now, if you add a value to mandates, government at all three levels takes half of what the American people make. Half. And you wonder why growth is slow? And how in the world do you expect to close the so-called income gap, wealth gap, with this kind of sluggish growth? How? It's really, really mind-boggling, the left. I remember Andy Stern, the former head of the SEIU union. Years ago, he said, well, Europe, as much as we like to make fun of them, they may have higher unemployment, but they have less inequality. So it's perfectly okay for people to have fewer jobs, as long as the ones who have jobs don't make a whole lot more than the next guy who has a job. Stunning. That's how they think. You don't believe in systemic racism, you're a bigot, and if you're black, you're an Uncle Tom. A bill that gives black farmers 120% debt relief just because they're black, not because they were discriminated against? Stunning.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Morning, Glory America. Hugh Hewitt here. Thank you for listening. Special welcome to our new affiliate in Lake City, Florida, as we welcomed our new affiliate in Clarksville, Tennessee yesterday, and of course Bellingham, Washington last week. They just keep flooding in. We're glad to have them. There is a key Senate race coming up in 2022 in my home state of Ohio, and about everybody in the state has declared for the Senate race, including Jane Timken, who is my guest. Jane Timken hails from the south of the state, but she got smart and moved up north. She's also a graduate of my college, Harvard. And Jane, welcome. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
And to you, I'm wearing my green. I hope I see you are as well. That's terrific. Jane, which house were you in at Harvard?
Cabot House.
Okay, Cabot. I'm a Winthrop guy, so I'm glad to know that. Jane, first of all, give people the bio. It's the first time you've been on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Run down the bio for us.
Sure. So I grew up in Cincinnati. Obviously, as you know, I went to Harvard. I worked in Washington, D.C. for a couple years, went to American University and happened to meet a guy from Canton, Ohio, and moved back to Northeast Ohio, practiced law, was a magistrate, got really involved in politics, quite frankly, after Obama came into office and started the Obamacare. I couldn't sit on the sidelines, became the vice chair of the Stark County Republican Party, became very successful at electing Republicans, stood up in 2016 and and ran for chairman of the party. Quite frankly, President Trump backed me, supported me, and endorsed me to be the chairman of the Republican Party. And I turned the party into a well-oiled machine and delivered some big results in 2018 and 2020, with Ohio going 8.5 points for President Trump. I understand Ohio voters. I've spent 150,000 miles in 2 cars, traveling the state. I know what it takes to win, and I'm going to win this U.S. Senate race because I'm going to Washington, D.C. to fight for Ohio families, our businesses, and our freedoms.
Now, Jane, the most important question in the Senate race is always, what's in it for Warren? So what's in it for Warren, Ohio? We always got to do the hometown hustle here. What are you going to do for Warren?
Well, as you know, you grew up there. That area is a blue collar, salt of the earth type of people. They're no nonsense, and that's why they gravitated towards President Trump. That area is moving towards the Republican Party. Really, it's all about jobs, jobs, jobs. We need to create an environment that businesses can move back to Warren, Ohio, and create jobs so people can care for their families and have a productive life in the American dream. And what we're seeing with the Democrats in less than 60 days is, quite frankly, they're trampling on that dream. They're talking about raising taxes. They're eliminating the oil and gas industry, which is a devastating effect to the Ohio economy, and opening the border, which is, in a time of a pandemic, not the best idea, but also bringing lots of undocumented illegal immigrants into the country to compete with these jobs. I'm going to fight for those Warren families. Trumbull County is fantastic. They're salt of the earth, great people, and they deserve the American dream. They need someone for them.
Check that box. Make sure you stop at John F. Kennedy High School when you go down there. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, you got a great Attorney General, Dave Yost. He's been a guest on the show a long time. He's a friend. I'm hoping Dave sues over this COVID bill, because in it is the requirement that you not cut taxes. If you take the money that the federal government is generously giving you back from the federal taxpayers and running up the deficit, Ohio would not be allowed to cut taxes. Do you think that's constitutional, Jane Timken?
No, it is not. It's actually, it's an overreach. It's coercive. It is exactly what the founding fathers did not want the federal government to do. It's states' rights and state sovereignty are prime in our Constitution, and Ohio has every right to reduce taxes. Thankfully, we have the majority in Republicans in the State House and a Republican governor, Mike DeWine. And if we want to reduce taxes, we're going to do it.
So when is the primary, Jane Timken, in 2022?
It's in May of 2022.
So we're about a year away, 14 months.
Right. Already out on the campaign trail, traveling the state. As you know, it's a big state, going to all 88 counties.
Now, there is really a parade of people. I know Josh Mandel. I know J.D. Vance. I know all the congressmen who are running. How do you think, with that many people, you might be the last man standing might be a woman, because you're the only woman I see in that race. But how is it going to play out? And I will be willing to come and moderate a debate. I'll be fair to everyone. Is there going to be a lot of debates? How do you think the campaign's going to unfold?
Sure. Well, as I said, I think I'm uniquely positioned out of all of the candidates. I've been, for the last 4 years plus, traveling the state, talking to voters and understanding their needs. People know me. They know when I go into their county that I have been there. They respect my leadership. I'm the kind of person who is a get things done, solve the problem kind of person. They appreciate my success and my leadership, and I think people will gravitate towards me as someone who they want representing them in the U.S. Senate. I like the field. I know everyone, as you know. I think the unique candidate, the conservative disruptor that people want in Washington, D.C.
President Trump allegedly came this close to endorsing you and then was talked out of it by the team that he has at Mar-a-Lago. Is that correct?
Well, I would welcome President Trump's endorsement, obviously, and I hope to earn his endorsement, and I hope that someday comes soon.
Did he talk to you about it and then got that close? And then I think the reports are his staff said it's too early, you can't get involved in races this soon. Is that correct?
Well, I don't want to talk about my conversations with President Trump, and that's what's speculated in the news. But as I said, I would love to earn President Trump's endorsement. He knows how hard I worked for him in the state of Ohio, and I would absolutely expect to earn his endorsement.
All right, now, another big development. Peter Thiel, who I also know, just shoved $10 million into a super PAC supporting J.D. Vance, another guest on the show. How do you react to that? $10 million goes a long way in Ohio media markets.
It sure does. But as you know, there's a real difference between PAC, a super PAC, $10 million and really hard dollars that a candidate needs to raise to actually run a race. TV ads are one thing, but actually a ground game, field operation, direct mail, all the things that a candidate really needs to do. And quite frankly, Ohio is the state where the ground game and voter contacts make a difference. And that kind of money does not always translate. You can spend a lot of money on TV, but if you don't show up and you don't talk to voters and you aren't in all of those counties and the Lincoln Day dinners and the Century Club breakfasts, they're not going to gravitate towards you as a candidate.
I also try to explain to people that the Timken name is unique in Ohio. And you're a Southerner, but you transplanted up to the heart of the Western Reserve. You're up there in northeastern Ohio. How does the Timken name work in Canton? I mean, you got a high school name for you. That's a great thing going for you to begin with. But do people say, way to go, Timken, or do they forget it?
I think there's a lot of respect for the family. The family's been obviously the company had been in Ohio for over 100 years and quite active in the community with its foundation work. And lots of people have been employed through the Timken companies. So I think there's a lot of respect for the company and the family name.
Now, will Governor DeWine get involved in this primary? You've obviously worked hand in glove with him through 4 years of building the party into a formidable, and it is formidable. As President Trump, it's a red state now. It didn't used to be a red state. It's a red state now. Will he get involved?
I would welcome Governor DeWine to be involved. I think that he obviously knows my leadership. I think he respects me as a leader, and I think he's probably concerned and running about his race. But any support, I would welcome his support if he would give it.
So, Jane Timken, I'm on WHK 1420 in Cleveland. If I come to Cleveland and offer a forum to all of the Republicans, will you come and join me there?
Sure, I would love to debate.
That's what I love. I know Josh will come. I expect JD will come. We should do it a lot. Don't you think we ought to have a lot of debates? Ohio is, it's a key set. If we don't hold Ohio, we don't hold the Senate, right? If we don't win in Ohio, it's over.
Exactly. And as you know, what's going on in Congress, we need to take back the Senate and we need to take back the House. The Democrats and their policies in less than 60 days are hellbent on, quite frankly, ruining the fundamental foundations of this country.
Jane Timken, great to talk to you. One last question. Why is your Twitter handle Janie Murphy? I know your maiden name is Murphy. Why do you not change it to Jane Timken?
Well, I started out as Janie Murph. That's, I'm Irish. I'm proud of my heritage, and my last name, my maiden name was Murphy. So
Janie Murph on Twitter. That's just so counterintuitive. Janie Murph on Twitter. Nice to meet you, Janie. I look forward to seeing you in person on the stage at WHK 1420. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
And to you. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Check out the governor of California. Here's Gavin Newsom standing in front of an empty Dodgers stadium. This is an unbelievable sight. Because of him, Dodger Stadium will probably stay open. And according to the embattled governor of California, even when the pandemic is over, it isn't going to be over because it's never over. We're never going to have normal again. I give you the governor of the state of California.
You know, when this pandemic ends, and it will end soon, we're not going to go back to normal because I think we all agree normal was never good enough. You know, normal accepts inequity. That's why Latinos are dying from COVID at a higher rate than any other racial or ethnic group. And while essential workers' wages aren't enough for them to afford the essentials. And why mothers have been leaving the workforce in staggering numbers. Look, our eyes are wide open to what's wrong. And so our journey back must also be a path to close those inequities. There is no economic recovery without economic justice.
Latinos are dying from COVID more than any other ethnic group because of inequity? Really? What, COVID is racist? A virus knows that I'm going to infect a Latino and kill a Latino more than a white guy? Got it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
I kind of am obligated to get into this story right now, which is the story of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. So I want to read this tweet here from Ben Means, an expert on the British monarchy. A lot of respect for the tradition and all of that. A lot of great friends in London and Great Britain. It's just not a primary concern of mine. And so I want to read from Ben Goldsmith's tweet, which I thought was terrific. The narrative being promoted by Meghan, friends of Meghan, and the leftist mainstream media and everyone else who hates the royal family and British traditions generally is that the royal couple were driven out of Britain because of snobbery and racism. This just isn't true. The British tabloid press and the British publicly initially adored the idea that a glamorous star from Suits was marrying into the royal family and got terribly excited by the novelty of their royal wedding in the chapel of Windsor Castle. They only started going off Meghan when they realized she was a pushy, ungrateful, entitled, gag-inducingly politically correct Hollywood gold digger who just gone and hitched herself up to Britain's favorite cheeky chappy warrior prince and turned him into an emasculated, humorless husk of his former self. It's actually from James Dellingpole, who I believe writes for Breitbart, amongst other places, and he interviewed me when we were in London for our campus tour. Very good guy. And so there's a lot of people that are kind of dissecting the interview yesterday. There's a lot of people that are going through the entire thing. I think just a broader question about this whole saga is, are we really now going to blame racism for the alleged oppressed life of Meghan Markle?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Welcome back, America. St. Patrick's Day is upon us, opening with a terrible story. 8 people are dead in Atlanta, 6 of them Asian or Asian American. We do not know the details yet. We do not know the motive. It appears, to most reasonable people, that is probably a race-based killing, and we will continue to report on that as news develops. Let me check markets for you, brought to you by andrewandtodd.com. I often talk to you about Andrew and Todd. They're sponsors of the show. They've also been, for the benefit of my new audience in Lake City, Florida, my new audience in Clarksville, Tennessee, my new audience in Bellingham, Washington. andrewandtodd.com are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They're lenders, and they sponsor the market update, the market review from yesterday and what's going on in Europe. Too early. I never make predictions about what's going to happen in the American market because this is a morning show. And things change in the afternoon, especially on a day that the Federal Reserve is meeting. So don't ever look for me to tell you where the market's going, and don't expect investment advice from me. I just tell you what's happened. But do expect me to tell you that if you own a home, you need to refinance it to the lowest rate possible and save yourself money. andrewandtodd.com will do that. Andrew Del Rey has been my friend for 20 years in a Bible study with me for more than a decade. Todd Avakian, a new friend of mine now, 8 years new. Together, they are at Sierra Pacific, and they have the best team in the business, 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172, or just go online to andrewandtodd.com. They will take a look at what your mortgage is right now, and they will tell you if you can improve on it. If you want to get money out, and Americans took more than $1.5 trillion of equity out of their homes in the last year to get through the pandemic. If you haven't done that yet, or you just want to save money, andrewandtodd.com. Yesterday, the Dow dropped 127. The NASDAQ went up 11. The S&P was down 6. That means a mixed market. The 10-year Treasury is stable at 1.62%. It's been hanging around there for 2 or 3 weeks. Still the lowest interest rates on a 30-year fixed in my lifetime. I mean, you're easily into the 3s, and you're probably into the 2s with good credit. It depends on a lot of factors. How much house are you buying? Are you getting a conventional mortgage? Are you putting a lot of money down or no money down? Are you a veteran and putting zero down? That's what you find out from andrewandtodd.com. Overseas today, Japan, Hong Kong, England, and Germany, the big four, all in the red by a little bit. So they didn't go up. They didn't really go down much because they're all waiting on the Federal Reserve to tell them what they're going to do. And I expect the Federal Reserve to do what it's done. There's no change in long-term interest. Oil is down to $64 a barrel. Gold at $17.28. The only thing I can tell you with certainty, it's a great day to get the best mortgage possible and to get into the housing market if you can. It's tough right now. Get a pre-qualifying letter from andrewandtodd.com. I want to go over to my cut sheet and play for you, if I can, Joe Biden last night endorsing a change of the filibuster. I can't find the cut sheet. Perhaps Dwayne has that handy. Here's Joe Biden last night saying he wants the filibuster changed. It is
to get Republican votes for the tax increase. You're not likely to get Republican votes for H.R. 1, expanding voting rights, or the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So aren't you going to have to choose? I know you've been reluctant to do.
Stop right there. Did you hear that? That's what I want you to hear. Play it again at the start. This is how media rolls. This is George Stephanopoulos. I like George. He's a left-winger. He's a Democrat activist. He's not a news anchor. He's still an activist. Listen to this.
To get Republican votes for the tax increase. You're not likely to get Republican votes for H.R. 1, expanding voting rights, or the John Lewis.
Stop. Expanding voting rights. No, it's not. It is an unconstitutional takeover of local election. That's media bias. Now, let me tell you about our friends at Food for the Poor. You will not see a lot of stories on Honduras anywhere. I talked to you about it, and I talked to you about Central America because I believe in Food for the Poor, and I believe in their campaign to reach out and touch every single person in that country with the rice and the beans and the other food that they need. Food for the Poor will ship as much food as they can afford to ship to Honduras, which is starving right now. It depends on, believe it or not, you. $25, $50, whatever donation you can make. There's a banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Please go there and be as generous as possible. You're about to get $1,400. Consider a 5% donation of $70 just to keep people from starving to death in Honduras. And thank you. It's at HughHewitt.com at the very top. I'll be right back with John Allen and Amie Parnes. Lucky is their new bestseller.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Born to Lead and Salem Now.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
My opponent asks her supporters
to recite a 3-word loyalty pledge. It reads, I'm with her. I choose to recite a different pledge. My pledge reads, I'm with you, the American people.
For me, that's the political kill shot, Raheem, where you take the classic establishment attitude of, you better be with me, I'm your elitist leader, and he says, actually, I want to fight with you, I'm with you. Talk to me about taxonomy, categorization. They have quite successfully turned populism into a pejorative, into a negative. What are we witnessing around the world in your vocabulary?
Oh, goodness. Even though, how long have you got? Even though, Barack Obama, when he came on the scene, they lauded populism and they lauded him running as this populist president, right? And then suddenly a couple of years later, populism didn't work.
So community organizers are okay, but Donald Trump, populism not.
Right, correct. Right. And he was, it's incredible I had forgotten that clip. It's incredible to go back to that moment because, of course, what did they say about Donald Trump for the 4 years after that is that he demanded explicit loyalty from everybody that worked for him, personal loyalty. Whereas her campaign phrase was literally, I'm with her. Not I'm with the country, not I'm with America, not I'm even with the future, right? Not an ideology, not a philosophy,
not
just
a platform. Her.
Just her. Right.
Cultic.
Totally cultish. Right. And that's the same chart. They're very good at this. I mean, they are way better than we are at this. Is taking little things and projecting them onto their opponents.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
If the president or the ostensible president is not behaving as the president, the country needs to know, is the vice president in charge? So it strikes me we have a constitutional crisis. I don't know how you get around it.
So let me give you the best guess that I can kind of piece together. All of Capitol Hill is sitting behind a fence with razor wire on top of it. Joe Biden is not taking public meetings. He is barely having public appearances, and even those are tightly controlled. He shows up with note cards in his pocket when he loses his way. He pulls the note cards out. He can't even read what's on the note cards. Kamala Harris is taking all of the heads of state meetings. She's making all the phone calls. She's the one interacting with other heads of state across the world. Barack Obama never left Washington, D.C., unlike other presidents. Most presidents leave the Capitol once their time in office is over. Susan Rice, who was his most loyal foot soldier of all of the Obama administration officials, she went out on 9/11 of 2012, lied to the entire nation on all the television shows about the Benghazi attack, suffered no wrongdoing for that. In fact, she got promoted. She left the ambassadorship that she had in the UN and she came into the White House staff after that event was carried out. So you've got someone who's very loyal, who is now Joe Biden's domestic policy chief advisor. And my guess is that she's also probably the author or responsible for the authoring of most of the executive orders that the executive branch has issued since he's been in office. My hunch is that President Obama is pulling the strings vis-a-vis Susan Rice.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
I looked at the headline the gentleman was calling about. This is in Newsweek. Evanston is paying reparations of $25,000 to black residents. They say that's not enough. Now, I said that to the gentleman without even seeing this headline. They say that's not enough. And this is what we're going to be facing. You know, decades ago, a congressman named John Conyers would introduce a bill at the beginning of Congress every 2 years for reparations. And it was a joke. And every year he'd do it. And every year he'd do it. Never in a million years did I ever think we'd get to the point where people are seriously taking this, where serious people are taking this seriously. Where do you start with this? I've heard that this is for 400 years of slavery. I heard 250 years of slavery. America didn't become a country until 1787. Slavery ended 1865. That's not 400 years. That's not 250 years. Government didn't own slaves. States didn't own slaves. Individuals owned slaves. And Obama said that in his view, reparations were justified. Of course they were justified. To the slaves themselves or to their legal heirs.
Back, America. Hugh Hewitt, joined by some old friends, Jonathan Allen and Amie Parnes. They own the franchise begun by T.H. White, the election of the president. And now John and Amie have done it again. They have a brand new book out, Lucky, How Joe Biden Barely Won the Presidency, which I inhaled over the last 2 weeks. It's a bestseller. Congratulations, John and Amie. Are you committed, Amie Parnes, to doing a third one?
I defer to John Allen on that one, but I don't know. We'll see. TBD.
What do you think, John? I asked you that 2 weeks ago. Now that you're over the initial shock of the book tour, have you begun on the next sequel?
We have not begun on the next sequel, but you know, I want to leave a little mystery for everyone. I think we'll continue to write books, and I suspect they will involve politics.
Yeah, I think that when you get a franchise and you got 2 bestsellers in a row, never give up the franchise. Now, I could just fill you with accolades and tell you how wonderful the book is, because it is, but I'd rather argue with you. And so let's go to the parts of the book that I have a disagreement with. First of all, first debate. I love the color, like the staples in the Biden green room are orange Gatorade and Diet Coke. That's great reporting. Were either of you in the green room?
No.
No.
How do you find out something like that?
We ask a lot of people.
Okay, you said the same thing. All right. Then you go to recount the debate, and conservatives are going to all stop and say the same thing. The first debate isn't correctly described. You're right. It didn't take long to find out that it was full alpha Trump. That's true. God, this guy is irritating, Biden thought. Every time he spoke, Trump cut him off. Every time Chris Wallace started to ask a question, Trump cut him off. Less than 10 minutes into the first presidential debate of 2020, Trump wouldn't let anyone get a word in edgewise, sidewise, or otherwise. I went back and watched it this morning. Do you guys still stand by that description?
Yes.
Amie?
Yes.
All right, let's play the first key intervention by Chris Wallace.
Well, all right, let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time. So on health care, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well,
I got rid of the individual
mandate.
mandate.
I'm going to give you an
Excuse
opportunity.
me. I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a big chunk of
Obamacare.
That is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst part of Obamacare.
Sir,
Chris, that was the worst part of Obama.
Let me ask my question.
Well, I'll ask Joe. The individual mandate was the most unpopular aspect of Obamacare. I got rid of it.
I'd like
and we will protect people with
President, I'm the moderator of this
conditions.
debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer your
ahead.
question. You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump health care plan?
Right. Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay.
Stop.
I'm not surprised.
At that point, I would have pulled a trapdoor, John. Chris Wallace lost it at that point. He made 3 accusations, 4 statements of policy, and he interrupted the president. The first round went fine. Do you understand the conservative critique of Chris Wallace and why Fox News lost its brand that night?
I understand the conservative critique of Chris Wallace. I mean, Fox moderated debates often end up with the president slamming the moderator. I mean, it's sort of part and parcel. I mean, you remember when Megyn Kelly was the Fox host that was doing a primary debate back in 2016. I don't know that Fox lost all conservatives, but I do think that I do understand why people were frustrated with Wallace. I mean, anytime Trump is going back and forth with someone, the people on Trump's side are going to be upset with the other guy.
But Amie, do you see my genuine objection to Chris's is being argumentative? As a lawyer, I would stand up and say, objection to your argument, Your Honor, argumentative and conclusory. He stated a conclusion about Obamacare. He argued with the president, and it wasn't what a debate moderator is supposed to do, which is ask a simple question and get out of the way.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of conservatives were disappointed by that, coupled with the fact that Fox News called Arizona early on election night, and I think that really pissed off a lot of people too.
It did, but that is, to me, that's irrelevant because the votes are in. And he lost the election. I've never argued anything, but he lost the election. But I do think these debates, and you guys covered the last one, you saw the Hillary debates, and you remember Candy Crowley's catastrophic intervention in the Obama-Romney debate, John. The center right just doesn't believe it's a fair deal anymore. They don't trust anybody in the media. I think Mike Allen reported it's down to 10% of Republicans trust the media.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, Hugh. Doesn't surprise me at all. But also, the media is such a large, sort of a broad canvas. I mean, there's a lot of different media. I mean, there are media I trust, there are media I don't trust. So I think that question in and of itself is likely to elicit that kind of an answer.
You're probably right. All right, and Lucky, the second thing I want to talk to you about is the most important moment in the debate only gets a paragraph. Page, where do you talk about it? I'll come back to it. The debate commission unilaterally, Amie Parnes, cancels the second debate. They unilaterally, they don't talk to anybody. And as you guys say, Biden was elated, Trump was infuriated. What does that tell you about the Presidential Debate Commission?
I mean, I think they had a decision to make, but if you recall at the time, the reason why Biden was elated was because he didn't want to, he was winning. He didn't want to, I think debates are sort of his weakness. We talk a little bit about this in the book, verbal blunders, his missteps. So, of course, he was more than happy to sort of have that decision. They just kind of let that happen, and they were fine with it. I think Trump at the time needed as much airtime as possible to kind of overtake Biden in that moment.
Well, he had lost the first debate by general consensus. John Allen, the Presidential Debate Commission is not supposed to have a substantive role. I think they're done, by the way. I think they're finished. No Republican will ever trust them again. It's made up of 13 never-Trumpers. They all hated Trump, and they just declared it was over. They didn't even call the campaigns. Did you have no one on the inside to report on that decision process? Because I think they just tanked for Biden.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there was a whole lot of debate internally about it, right? I mean, that happened almost instantaneously. I think you're right that the debate commission, at the very least, is an establishment institution. It's, in fact, probably the very definition of an establishment institution. And so the likelihood that they certainly weren't going to lean toward Trump. Trump wasn't going to be favored by decision-making from the debate commission. He picks fights with establishment institutions all the time, and they fight back. And he then seems surprised that after he's been scuffing their shoes that they're upset by it. But at the same time, there were probably a lot of ways to have a negotiation around that, and they immediately, just canceled the second debate, which obviously, as you point out, was beneficial to Biden and harmful to Trump.
Because Trump did, as you detailed, change his tactics for the third debate, but he only had a chance to change them in the third debate. They basically canceled America's window on the presidency unilaterally. I'm still astonished by it. I'm astonished you only gave it a paragraph. Is that because they closed up? I think their executive director, I think they all went to ground because they knew they screwed up. Is that what happened when you reported it, Amie?
I think, if I recall correctly, John and I tried to get some answers from them, and I don't think anyone was willing to talk.
They're hiding.
No,
They're hiding. All right. Let me talk to you about, I got two more objections. I looked in the index for polling. There's nothing about polling. When I talked to the president, I went into the Oval. I won't tell you what he told me, but I told him, you lost the election because of the Wisconsin poll. The Wisconsin poll by my newspaper, the Washington Post and ABC, had I'm quoting from their October 28th piece by Jacqueline Alamany. Former Vice President Joe Biden leads President Trump by 17 points in Wisconsin, according to a new Washington Post ABC poll out this morning. That's a stunning gap less than 1 week from the election in one of the states Trump picked off in 2016 to pull off his surprise upset over Hillary. It could herald a more substantial win by Biden than some Democrats are afraid to say out loud but are whispering about. 17 points. The actual result was 49.45% to 48.82%, 20,700 votes out of 3,230,000 cast. John Allen, that's the biggest polling miss ever. Did it matter? I think it mattered a lot. Did it matter?
I think it mattered, but perhaps in giving Democrats overconfidence about what was going on in the campaign. I suppose it could have mattered in quashing the Trump vote a little bit, or depressing the Trump vote a little bit, particularly in Wisconsin. But I'm curious on your theory on it here.
I think it had a shattering effect on Republican enthusiasm. I know how it affected me. If you're down 17 points in Wisconsin, you're not going to win Wisconsin or Michigan or Pennsylvania. If you're down by 17 points in Wisconsin, it's going to be 49 states. And it's what happened when Florida was wrongly called by the media in 2000. Republican get out the vote operators, they just go home. And so from the 28th on, 17 points. How can you be that wrong, Amy?
No, and it was closer than a lot of people thought, and that's sort of why we talk a lot about lucky and how close it was. People always question barely. What do you mean by barely? It was so close. I mean, clearly, neither camp saw how close it was there, and I think that's telling. I mean, I think when you come so close in key states like that, I think that the margin was closer than it was in 2016, and we talk a lot about that. So maybe that poll did diminish, energy. But I think when you look at how close it was, it could have gone either way.
It's 42,000. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, I also think here that when you see a 17-point poll in Wisconsin, you should question the validity of that as the news organization putting it out. I mean, 17 points. One of the parties could have put a serial killer up as the nominee, and they would be within 17 points in Wisconsin. I mean, it just didn't make sense when it came out.
John, it was the Washington Post and ABC News. It was a gut punch. I don't think anyone can say that. That's what I told the president. I said, you lost the election that day because everybody's, 17 points. Maybe they're off by 5. It's still 12 points. Or maybe they're off by 5 and it's 24 points and people hate Trump. It was a gut punch and it was repeated again and again and again. Why do polling groups never make major errors on behalf of Republicans? John, I'll throw that one to you. They never make major errors on behalf of Republicans. Ever. Never.
Well, I certainly think in the Trump era, there's something going on, right? Like the pollsters understand that. We write about in the book that the Biden team, their pollsters and their data analytics people readjusted their models because they felt like the public polling was too generous to Joe Biden, and they wanted to know what was really going on. And still, even after they made adjustments to try to take into account, what colloquially we call the hidden Trump vote, even then the Democratic polling and data analytics were too rosy for what actually happened. So they rejiggered their numbers to try to take account for it, and even that didn't work.
Lucky is a wonderful book, but I wonder if the name isn't more like Helped, because 42,000 votes in 3 states, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia, separated Donald Trump from the presidency. Do we agree on that, Amy?
Yes.
It's 42. So the media have to be put on trial here, and I want to talk about Hunter Biden now. You guys discuss Hunter a little bit. Inexplicably, you do not, however, mention big tech's shutdown of the New York Post story on Hunter Biden. Why not, Amy?
It just wasn't. I know that Republicans really wanted to make this an issue. It was a bit of an issue, but we also thought that it was like a little bit over the top, I think, if I'm being honest too. I don't know if John wants to add anything to this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we heard a lot about Hunter Biden in this election throughout the course of the campaign, whether you're talking about the sort of Ukraine issues all the way through the laptop discovery and what was on that laptop. It felt like we got into it to the degree that we could, to the degree that it was clear that it was affecting the politics, which is what were the next hits going to be from Trump, and how did the Biden folks try to deal with that? But also some of it for us is unsubstantiatable, and you want to be careful. But I do understand what you're saying in terms of the Post having a story that is essentially accurate that just gets kind of clobbered by everyone else.
Big Tech took it off. Big Tech censored it. And so when I look back, I see Chris Wallace, I see the Washington Post, and I see Big Tech working with Joe Biden to get him a 42,000 vote win. And he won. I'm glad you guys exposed. There's no fraud, no more significant fraud than any other election. I'm glad you did that. But I do know why conservatives do not trust the electoral process. It's because of those big three. Now we can talk about stuff that I love in the book. I gave you my big three arguments. Let's get to the good stuff. Yeah, all right. I want to play for you the key moment. I read this book for the next election, Kamala. And I just read, I went and made extensive notes. Here's the key moment for Senator Harris in the election. Cut number 24. It is a debate, the first Democratic debate. Actually, it's the third Democratic debate.
Williamson, thank you very much. Vice President Biden, we're going to get to you. Hang on, we're going to get to you.
Stage, I would like to speak on the issue of race.
Senator Harris,
and so what I will say is that
I could preface this, we will give you 30 seconds, since we're going to come back to you on this again in just a moment. Go for 30 seconds.
Okay. So on the issue of race, I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly. There is not a black man I know, be he a relative, a friend, or a coworker, who has not been the subject of some form of profiling or discrimination. Growing up, my sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't play with us because we were black. And I will say also that in this campaign, we've also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Amie Parnes, you two do a wonderful job of dissecting the preparation for that moment, the delivery, and especially President Biden's reaction. Will you expand on the audience on that?
Sure. I mean, that moment was planned. We go into the prep of it, and she came out, Kamala Harris had a pretty good launch, and then her campaign wasn't going so well. And they felt like they needed internally a moment for her to shine, if you will. And so they picked this moment. They rehearsed it. We go behind the scenes on what they did and how they did it. And so it wasn't a spontaneous moment. It was obviously planned. The Biden was really irked by it. In a commercial break, he basically calls it BS. And I think it kind of stayed with them the entire time as he was choosing a VP. And I think that's one of the reasons why he was kind of looking around until the very last minute.
I think Lucky has the best description of the vice presidential process that I've read. It's a fascinating, it affects American politics for the next generation. The decision to put Kamala Harris on the ticket probably wins the election for Joe Biden, and it puts her in a position to be the front runner in 4 years, because I don't think he's running again. And it all comes down to their overcoming their distaste for that moment, John. First of all, why did Biden feel so betrayed? That comes through in Lucky.
Yeah, so number one, it was because Kamala Harris had a relationship with a professional relationship with Beau Biden, the son, the late son of Joe Biden, and so there was some feeling there that they had mutual regard for Biden's son, and they talked to each other before, and Biden had been helpful to her in her campaigns. So I think that was the sense of betrayal, and I think it was so personal, right? She starts with I know you're not a racist, or I don't believe you're a racist, which everybody, once she says that, everybody knows what's coming next, right?
Yeah.
The big hammer about to fall. So, I mean, I think Biden looked at it as her really twisting the knife personally, but I also think that he is unrealistic about how his positions, not only in the past, but even in this particular campaign, might be perceived by a large share of the Democratic electorate, a large share of African Americans, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. I think Biden is a little bit blind to how what she said was hurtful could be hurtful to a lot of people. Fast forward to the vice presidential selection process, and he doesn't want to pick her. I mean, she's the obvious choice. She's the sitting He's already said he's going to pick a woman. We're in the middle of the George Floyd protests and the sort of clash around that across the country. It becomes apparent that it's much better off. He's much better off picking an African American. So he's looking at the list of folks that fit that bill, and he just doesn't want Kamala Harris. He starts with her and he goes through all these different options, and he finally gets back to her. And even at the end, we report he calls Jim Clyburn, the House Democratic whip from South Carolina, who's so influential in the primary process, calls Jim Clyburn and basically says, I'm having a problem between my head and my heart. And his head is pick Kamala Harris, and his heart is not to pick Kamala Harris. But he ends up doing what all presidential candidates do, which is to pick the candidate that is least likely to prevent them from winning the presidency.
That's it, Amie, and I am astonished the detail that you two have in Lucky. Joe Biden managed to make an already arduous and complicated vice presidential selection process, which every 4 years iterates into an even more complex, labyrinth, and Byzantine process. This time, Team Biden came up with 2 sets of vetters. What was the theory there?
I'm sorry, 2 sets of vetters?
Yeah, for the vice presidential candidate. They had Chris Dodd on Team A and Jake Sullivan on Team B.
John, do you want to answer this question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not sure the theory is anything other than trying to give a nice giveaway, give some prominence to a few people, because the folks who did the interviews, those 2 teams, which it was actually Chris Dodd and Lisa Blunt Rochester, Eric Garcetti, and a longtime Biden lawyer whose name is escaping me right now. But I think they were just trying, for the most part, to give something for Chris Dodd and Garcetti and Rochester to do that made them sound prominent, because most of the vetting is actually done by law firms. And, there are some political questions that are involved, but ultimately that decision was going to be made by Joe Biden.
I couldn't believe Garcetti was involved in any way, shape, or form. I mean, that astonished me. So look, they come down to Karen Bass and the mayor of Atlanta and a couple other people and Kamala Harris, and torpedoes get dropped in the water at everybody but Kamala. And they blame Kamala. She says, oh, no. Well, who did it?
Well, I think they were all they were all out for her a little bit, which we reported in the book. And what's interesting, Hugh, is that Gretchen Whitmer, which people had sort of discounted from the start, was, I think, one of the leading contenders. And I think that when he talks to Jim Clyburn about this battle between his head and his heart, he had always sort of seen Whitmer as more closely aligned with his views. He had always kind of liked her throughout the process and felt like she would be a good VP. And it's interesting to see how close she came in the end. I think a lot of people thought Susan Rice would be the last